Well, I have the pleasure to be here today with three of the bravest individuals that I've ever known. Each of you guys have taken on some of the most powerful agencies in the world single-handedly. And I think we should go around and introduce each of you before we begin. Many people have met you, of course, Kevin, on our regular show, The Intelligence Assessment. Take it away.
Well, you know, I refer to myself as a recovering CIA officer. You know, it takes 2 years, 3 to get that stuff out of your head. Mm-hmm. But I challenged the state secrets privilege when the CIA tried to slap that on my family's case of poisoning. My kids were very, very sick. My oldest son still is. And, you know, as they say, you can mess with a man, but you don't mess with his family. So I came out and decided I was going to fight that, and I went public with their abuse of the state secrets privilege. It was about, I get 10, 15 years in jail. I did it anyway. I mean, I gave it a lot of thought, and they just can't do this. I mean, this is our country. It's our Constitution. They've got this unbridled power that they use with impunity to destroy whistleblowers' lives, and they've been using it for over 20 years. And so I decided to come out against it. And by way of background, I was an agent on the director of the CIA's detail, William Casey. Then I was a counterintelligence officer looking for moles in the CIA, and then the Hansen came. It wasn't us, it was the FBI the whole time. So that's my background. I'll tell you, I'm really honored to have these guys here doing this, because in many respects, this is historic. It's hard to get the three of us together anyway. It is. Because we live in an off-the-grid farm somewhere deep in the southern United States where we do the show from. So the fact that we're all able to get here like this is it's inspiring. So thank you guys for coming, and Jason, you can take it and anywhere you want to go.
Well, thank you, Kevin, and thank you guys absolutely for joining us. Bill, you and I have spoken in the past. Why don't you fill everybody in for those who maybe didn't catch that first interview? It did get some good play on Zero Hedge.
Okay, all right. Well, that's good, you know. Well, I'm Bill Binney. I worked for NSA for 36, and it's a little over 36 years, 4 in the military and the rest in civilian. And basically I solved a lot of their puzzle problems with the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact, crypt systems and codes and data systems, and just the general idea of data and how to understand what's really going on in the world and be able to do what intelligence is supposed to do, predict intentions and capabilities. Something they've lost, by the way. We haven't had any of that since, I don't know, the last 10, 20 years.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's really been lost by them.
And of course, you and your team were behind Thin Thread.
Yeah, we devised a way that could find the bad guys. In other words, we look at the haystack and pull out the needles and let the haystack go right by. So that was our design, fundamentally. That's basically what we did. So the whole idea was to make it possible for our analysts to succeed. Now, right now, they're all failing because they're just dumping all the data on them. They can't see threats in advance.
Right.
So if you pull out the needles, you can see the threats coming.
Right.
But
if I understand correctly, the basic premise is it's not so difficult to gather intelligence. We've got lots of tools to do that, but basically sifting through it and finding what's actionable is what Thin Thread was supposed to do.
Yeah, right. That's exactly right. And that's basically what we did, and had that running in November of 2000. And were prepared to deploy it against terrorism first in January of 2001. So we would have picked up all that stuff that they did leading up to the 9/11 attack, as well as all the attacks since then. I mean, they were all known. Everybody who perpetrated them were known by either the police or the intelligence agencies or both. And yet, they could not stop the attacks. And the reason is because they're buried in all this data, looking across the, you know. I maintain they're looking at 4 billion people in the world, basically, because that's the number of people with phones and computers and stuff like that, credit cards, anything electronic.
Wow.
And if you summed up the total number of analysts they have with NSA, CIA, FBI, and the Five Eyes, plus another 9 countries participating with them, they probably could come up with about 20,000. So divide 20,000 into 4 billion, and you get 200,000 people per analyst.
Ooh.
So that's the problem. That's why they're failing. That's why they can't stop all the attacks. Everyone succeeded until they attack. Then they know who did it, and then they can focus in on everybody that's associated with them because they've got all the data. Right? So now you know what to look for in your data. Until you know what to look for, you know, they're searching through all this massive amount of data. That's why they're failing.
I think later in this conversation, I'm going to want to ask you if we think that they were unable to stop the attacks or unwilling to stop the attacks. But we'll get to that in just a moment. John, why don't you introduce yourself? You and I have never met before today. It's a pleasure to meet you,
Pleasure's mine. Thank you. So I'm John Kiriakou. I spent 14 years in the CIA. The first half of my career was in analysis. The second half was in counterterrorism operations. I was the chief of counterterrorism operations in Pakistan after the 9/11 attacks, and led a series of raids in March of 2002 that resulted in the capture of Abu Zubaydah, who we believed at the time was the number 3 in Al-Qaeda, and I'm not allowed to say the number, but many dozens of other Al-Qaeda fighters. Abu Zubaydah was the first high-value target that we had captured after the attacks. And so he was sent to a secret prison, and I returned to headquarters at the end of my tour. I was asked when I got back if I wanted to be trained in the use of enhanced interrogation techniques. That was the terminology. I had no idea what that meant. I'd never heard it before. And when I asked what it meant, and it was described to me, I said, that sounds like a torture program. Oh no, I was told the president had approved it. It's not a torture program, it's illegal. To me, even if it was legal, or it was legal, not illegal, even if it was legal, which I believe it never was legal, it was still immoral and unethical. And so I declined. I'm sorry to say that of the 14 people who were asked, I was the only one who declined.
Wow.
Yeah, and you know, they were friends of mine, these other 13 guys. We socialized together. I went on vacation with a couple of them. Our children played together. And they were willing to do monstrous things. And so on August 1st, 2002, the CIA began torturing Abu Zubaydah. The president lied to the American people consistently from that day onward, looking right in the camera and saying, "We do not torture." Those were his exact words. Well, I left the CIA in 2004 and I went into the private sector, and I kept waiting for somebody to come forward and say something about this program. And nobody said anything. I waited 5.5 years. And then finally I got a call from ABC News, from Brian Ross, asking if I would go public. I said that I would think about it.
How did he know that you
He said he had a source who told him that I had tortured Abu Zubaydah. I said that was absolutely untrue. I never laid a hand on Abu Zubaydah or on any other prisoner. And I said, in fact, I was the only person who was kind to Abu Zubaydah. I guarded Abu Zubaydah the first 56 hours of his captivity. I never left his bedside. And we did a lot of talking in those first 56 hours. So I never laid a hand on him. I was nice to him. I got a lot of great information out of him because I was nice to him. And then the president made that statement finally in December of 2007. "We do not torture," he said.
Of course, that was President Obama.
Bush.
Oh, Bush.
George W. Bush. Right. And then a few days later, in response to a question that a reporter shouted at him as he's getting on the presidential helicopter, he said, well, if there is torture, it's the result of a rogue CIA officer. And it was that statement.
They were trying to pin it on you.
On me. I
called
my wife.
You were the one guy who didn't want to do it.
I was the only one who turned it down. And I said, Brian Ross's source is at the White House, and they're going to pin this on me. So I decided that no matter what Brian Ross asked me, I was going to tell the truth. And so I said 3 things in that interview that have changed the course of the rest of my life. I said that the CIA was torturing its prisoners. I said that torture was official U.S. government policy. It was not the result of a rogue. And I said that the policy had been personally approved by the president. And so within 24 hours, as you can imagine, the FBI began investigating me. They investigated me from December of 2007 to December of 2008. And then they sent my lawyer what's called a declination letter, saying that they had determined that I had not committed a crime and they were declining to prosecute. So it was a happy day. What I didn't know was that 3 weeks later, when Barack Obama is inaugurated as president, John Brennan asked him to secretly reopen the case against me, which Justice did. I had no idea.
How did you find out that John
In discovery,
Brennan...
after I was arrested, 3 years later.
Wow.
So this went on from January of 2008 I'm sorry, January of '09, rather, to January of 2012, the FBI was intercepting my phone calls. They were intercepting my emails. They had 3 different teams of surveillance on me.
At the behest of John Brennan.
At the behest of John Brennan.
So that's a lot of insight into the interaction between the FBI and the CIA.
Boy, is it.
Wow.
Yep. And then I was arrested in 2012. I was charged with 5 felonies, including 3 counts of espionage. And remember, in some cases, espionage is a death penalty charge.
Yeah.
It's the gravest charge with which an American can be
Faced.
Can face. And so I hadn't committed espionage, of course, and eventually those charges were dropped. But this just gives you an idea of what whistleblowers are up against. Remember, the government has unlimited resources.
Right.
Literally unlimited resources. And they do 2 things in order to ensure a conviction. First of all, according to ProPublica, the federal government wins 98.2% of its cases.
Wow.
Right? Those are like Saddam Hussein kind of numbers.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
You know, when Saddam Hussein was running for re-election and got 98%, we would laugh. We would say the fix was in. Well, justice wins 98% of their cases, and we say they're geniuses.
Right.
Right? Or everybody else is a criminal. So they win 98.2% of their cases. Almost all of that is a result of plea bargains. So they do 2 things. First, they do something called charge stacking, where they will charge you with 10, 20 felonies.
Yep.
Right?
Whether you did them or not.
Whether you did them or not, and you likely didn't do them.
Right.
But they charge you anyway. They make you defend yourself. They wait until you go bankrupt.
Right.
Yep.
And then they come back and they say, we'll dismiss all the charges but 1 if you take a plea. Well, what are you going to do? You're facing 100 years in prison. They're offering you 2 years.
And you have no money left.
You're broke, and you have a 1.8% chance of winning. So what are you going to do? It's an economic decision. The other thing that they do is venue shopping. So what they'll do is they'll look for the federal district in which they think they have the best likelihood of convicting you and where you're going to get the longest sentence.
Based on their relationship with some judge
Correct.
or something like that?
Based on their relationship with the judge. For example, I was charged in the Eastern District of Virginia, which is known as the Espionage Court, because no national security defendant has ever won a case there, ever. Jeffrey Sterling was charged there. Ed Snowden's been charged there. The rumor is that Julian Assange is being charged there. But where was David Petraeus charged? In the Western District of North Carolina.
Interesting.
So when he took a plea to a misdemeanor charge of providing his adulterous girlfriend with the president's above top secret black books and outing the names of 10 covert CIA operatives, and he was sentenced to 18 months of probation and a fine, the judge came down from his bench to shake his hand and thank him for his service to the country. That doesn't happen in the Eastern District of Virginia.
Wow. Wow.
So there's virtually no chance you're going to be exonerated. My lawyer said something to me once. When the government finally offered me their final deal, which was 2.5 years in prison, I said no, because I didn't do anything wrong. And one of the lawyers said, you know what your problem is? You think this is about justice, and it's not about justice. It's about mitigating damage.
Your lawyer said that? Wow.
He said, if you were my brother, I would beg you to take the deal. It doesn't matter if you're innocent. And so I took the deal.
John, that is a staggering bit of testimony right there to really
Welcome
realize,
to justice in America.
Right.
Right, to realize how corrupt the justice system is. Now, there was a fascinating conversation going on between the 3 of you as we were setting up about some of the individuals that have been involved in each of your cases who remain involved in the Department of Justice today and who were pivotal in this Russia collusion, Russia gate, this thing that's led to Robert Mueller's special counsel. Now, Kevin, were you and John in the CIA at the same time?
Well, I think we were.
Yeah,
and then
we were.
I came out in 2002, and then what happened? I was trying to find you. You know, after they charged you, and I went on these lines because I was going to come down and visit you and just say, "Stay strong, man."
Thank you.
Because they were still trying to come and pick us up.
Yeah, I followed your case on in the Washington Post.
Yeah. And so they broke into our house. They painted a chemical on the ceiling to try to conceal whatever the toxin was. I and my family were followed. Of course, we reported to the FBI, and they said, no, we're not interested in that. And I'm like, come on, they're doing this on U.S. soil. This is the CIA. This is against the law. And they didn't want to touch it. So I filed a personal injury suit, and I caught them breaking into the house. I had affidavits from all the guards who were ordered to follow us. They were good guys.
These were CIA people.
Well, these were, they're under a different status, let me just put it that way. But they're connected directly. So they gave us affidavits that we were ordered to follow you and your family. The order was given to burn down our house, to get us out of there and burn the thing.
These contractors
to the ground. They were actually government employees on this base. I had all the affidavits and everything, so I filed suit with a federal judge, and he was like, Mr. Shipp's got you over the barrel, because I had all this evidence, I had affidavits, I had pictures, the whole shebang. So the CIA, and this was under John Brennan and George Tenet. Now, I didn't know it was Brennan at the time, but these same snakes keep rearing their ugly heads.
It's a small town.
It is a small town. And they're all interconnected.
Don't forget Mueller.
And Mueller, yeah, who let the HSBC bank thing go when they laundered drug money, you know, along with James Comey, his buddy. But that's another story. Anyway, so I filed a suit, and the evidence was so strong, the judge, which was unheard of, ordered the CIA to legal mediation in Washington, D.C. Wow. So we went, and I presented my case, and I remember the CIA security officer, who was actually on the director's staff with me years before, when I laid all the evidence out, his jaw dropped. I remember him going, I mean, they didn't realize what we had. So the judge ordered the CIA to mediation. They signed it. It's up on my website now. I just put the whole shebang out there, put that up and everything else. And we thought it was done, you know, this horrible nightmare is over. And 3 days later, the CIA calls my attorney and says, if Mr. Shipp does not accept a fraction, as I said before, a fraction of the settlement, we're going to invoke the state secrets privilege and seal his case forever so no one can ever see the evidence and Congress has no access to it. I didn't know they had that power, but they do. They use it with NSA people. You may know some, they tried it with the NSA surveillance program. So they did. They hit me with the state secrets privilege, threatened me and my family with prison if we even talked to our attorneys about the evidence and sealed the case.
Violation of the First Amendment.
Big time.
So just do it.
Well, it's exactly what I did. And after all of that, this is criminal. It's unconstitutional. My family is sick. They're telling my kids, you can go to prison if you talk about this. And after about a week, that's when I went to the Post and I said, this is a violation of the state's secrets privilege. I'm standing up against it. I know I'm probably facing
the Washington Post.
Yeah, and I know I'm probably facing prison, but at this point, I just don't care, you know. And they never did. The Post went straight to the CIA, as I said, reported it to them, and then I wrote from the company of shadows and built a code in there just because I'd had it, and they missed that, and so we went for how many years? 5 years waiting to be arrested. I remember sitting in my office. I had an office window, and I just sat there waiting for the black Suburbans to pull up. And I was going to walk out and say, make my day, you know. And they never came. And I guess 5 years is a statute of limitations. I guess they never showed up because what they did was a criminal violation, several of them. And they knew that if that case came out in the public, it's all going to be exposed. But man, they went after me with a vengeance. I lost my retirement. We lost our house. They had 9 attorneys on my case. I had 1. We were running out of money, and that's a procedure that they use, as you know,
absolutely.
absolutely destroy you and your family.
That's really terrible. I mean, I think most people who are watching CNN, Fox, reading the Washington Post, they have no idea. I speak to so many people who tell me, oh, you know, Jason, you're a conspiracy theorist. I trust the government. But I'm sitting here with 3 individuals who were in the government, in the service of the people of the United States of America, whose constitutional rights have all been violated.
It's worse than that.
It is
Jason.
worse
because in our case, right, they didn't have anything to go against because we stayed in channels. We went to the inspector generals. We went to the intelligence committees. We did, as Feinstein said, all the proper channels. So we stayed there for 7 years, and so at the end, they manufactured evidence against us. And they put it in affidavits. That was their big mistake. So now, and somebody felt so bad about it, what they were doing, that they gave us a copy of their draft indictment. But I had already assembled all the evidence to prove malicious prosecution on the part of the Justice Department, and I threatened them with it, and they ran like chickens. And that was the end. I've never heard of it since then.
And that's what they are. They're cowards.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah,
career
they
cowards.
I mean, when you expose the sunlight is the best disinfectant.
Yep.
And when you do that, these people run scared.
Yep.
Well, it's good that there was a whistleblower who helped you. I mean, people within these agencies should be very concerned because they're essentially you guys. And if the agency turns inward on them, I think they would want someone exposing the indictment.
Well, I didn't, that was somebody in the DOJ, but that came in afterward, after we threatened them and they ran. So then they said, well, gee, you know, look at what they're doing. So they sent it through by Pogo or somebody, you know, and we got it through the grapevine. But the point was they raided us, took all our material, destroyed our business, right? But we recovered the material afterward because we're always backed up. If you know who you're up against, you know. I expected them to attack us with through an active attack in the computer.
Sure.
You know, I didn't expect them to physically do that because, you know, we didn't do anything, you know. So, but they wanted to get intellectual property too, which we never put in paper or on the computer. So they got nothing. So, but the point was that they had multiple reasons to do that. Vendetta because NSA, we complained about the fraud, waste, corruption at NSA, you know, and the Inspector General found that everything we said was true. Department of Defense Inspector General did the investigation for 2.5 years and finally published in 2005. We complained in 2002, you know, came out in 2005 and said, yep, everything we said was true. And this was under Hayden, okay? That was all
One of
this
the
corruption.
worst of them all.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, yeah.
Yeah, but you know, Mueller was the FBI guy at the time, so he helped manage all this attack on us. Also, I helped manage some of his FBI agents. Also, put in the sworn affidavit to get the warrant. They put in lies in there to get it, and this was I can't remember the guy's name. It'll come to me later. But at any rate, you know, I know the guy's name, Paul Marek. That's it, a special agent Paul Marek. He was the guy who signed the affidavit with lies in it, you know. And we knew it was a rush job because it was the second day after Gonzalez's testimony to the Senate Judiciary Committee about the terror surveillance programs, things we were complaining about, them spying on U.S. citizens and all that, as well as the corruption, fraud, waste, and abuse in NSA and others. Of course, it led to others; they were part of it too. So. Yeah, I knew it was a setup, and so when the agents were there searching through our home, I said, I had to ask them, I said, did somebody outside the FBI tell you to come here and do this? And of course I knew I hit the nail right on the head because the body language from every agent just said, they all kind of backed off. Like, it's like when you catch your kid with his hand in a cookie jar. That's what I did. And these guys all looked to Marek to answer because Marek was the only one, he was the only one who was cleared for the programs they wanted to silence us on. That was the Stellar Wind domestic spying program, which is still going on. That's the one they're still trying to protect. That's why you don't hear about NSA, you hear about CIA and FBI. Let's push those guys out front, let them take the flak, keep this real program hidden so that the public never knows, but we'll have all the data and information on everybody so we can control the entire population. Okay, that's the whole point. So at any rate, that's what they were doing, and that's the reason they're trying to keep it still hidden. And it's all a cover-up is being done by the intelligence committees as well.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's right.
So,
You've
I mean,
just said something that put a chill through this whole room, that control the entire population.
that's right.
That's underway right now.
That has been for quite some time.
People
I mean,
don't
they went
realize
after
it.
the Tea Party with the IRS using
Right.
this program. They went after the you know, like Occupy Wall Street people. They went after Elliot Spitzer to stop going for the bankers, right? They had to get rid of him. They used this data to do it. Mueller and the FBI and Alexander and NSA, right? And then they used it against whistleblowers for sure, but also the Jim Rosen, the Associated Press. You have to silence anybody in the press that's going to report anything that you don't want reported. This is how the CIA basically has more tentacles to control the press, and that's been. I mean, and that's what Casey said back in the 80s. He said, you know, when virtually all of the things being reported are false, you'll know we've succeeded.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, we were all up on the 7th floor. As a matter of fact, the funniest thing ever happened to me was my boss let me sit in Casey's chair and watch fly fishing videos because he found out that I was a fly fisherman. I'm like, man, it doesn't get much better than this. But that rascal was doing things bad things that none of us even knew, and I was stationed in his house, clean up all the documents he left all over the place. And he's out there doing with the Saudi prince. Remember the car bombing killed 94 women and children at a girls' school because they screwed the whole thing up? No one ever heard about that. That number of people died, and that's the kind of stuff that was going on. You only knew if you were in the certain compartment they were pulling this stuff, and that's how Brennan has gotten away with most of what he's done, because at his level and his connections with the FBI, and this little cabal has been being groomed for probably, I think Comey has been a Hillary Clinton fixer for at least 20 years. So they built this little, you know, some people call it the shadow government, the deep state, whatever. Is that a conspiracy theory? No. I mean, in one of my briefings, I proved that they manipulate Congress, the CIA does specifically. Constantly, without withholding clearances, blacking out information.
If I could interrupt you on that point for 1 second. I challenged a Democratic member of the Senate Intelligence Committee for not helping me when he knew I was innocent and he didn't help me. And his response was so telling. He said, it takes all my energy just to not lose my security clearance.
Yeah, and hence his political career and his advancement.
That's right.
I sent a detailed letter to every member of the Intelligence Committee, including Dianne Feinstein and Nancy Pelosi, detailing everything that the CIA had done. Never got a response. Not one.
No, because they're two of the biggest CIA cheerleaders on Capitol Hill.
Absolute corruption. And you get a spot on the committee not to investigate the CIA, but to promote your career and walk around saying you've got a clearance, and it's empty and it's worthless. Yeah,
absolutely
I agree.
True.
Well, it would seem that a situation like that is actually not worthless. It's very valuable to the CIA to have these congressional representatives who just push this stuff through, look the other way. So you guys seem to be dealing with a lot of the same people. When you see the types of things in the news that the average person sitting at home sees, Dr. Blasey Ford, of course I know how Kevin feels about that, but what do you guys think when you see, not her personally, but a scenario like that playing out on the TV against Kavanaugh?
Well, I didn't believe it to begin with. I mean, when you can't tell where it happened or when it happened, and you have your witnesses who can't testify that they saw anything, you have no evidence to back it up. I mean, the point is you can't just accuse people. I mean, right now you're considered, I mean, he was considered guilty until proven innocent.
He's still considered guilty by most.
I say that's a crock. I mean, look at the Duke lacrosse case. Look at other cases that have all been surfaced here. People say things for the wrong reasons. So and so when you say you have to just believe women, well, I'm sorry, that doesn't work. You have to have some evidence or some backup to verify what you're saying. You can't just say something and I mean, I mean, the whole point of our Constitution is you're really innocent until proven guilty.
Kevin said many times we're living in a post-constitutional America.
So,
I mean, each of your stories seem to prove that out.
Yeah, they scrapped it. Except they still play word games to it. They keep saying, oh yeah, we believe in the Constitution. They'll play that word game. That's why it's best to do it out in public, to address them in public.
How dangerous is that, Bill, the trampling of the Constitution that we're living under right now?
Well, it leads to many very bad things that you're hearing, some of them right here. I mean, what they do to people, that doesn't count the, you know, all the murders they do around the world.
Right.
I mean, and they just have no conscience. I mean, if you believe in the Constitution, you believe in human rights. And you don't do these kinds of things.
And through the veil of secrecy, the abuse of unconstitutional secrecy, I know John and I mean, there's a good use for it in some occasions, like we were undercover. If we would have been known, we would have been killed or worse. So not all secrecy is bad, but the way they're using it now as a weapon is illegal, it's criminal, it's unconstitutional. People are dying by the tens of thousands. They've left the Constitution completely. The CIA and NSA are outside of it, now the FBI. That is a constitutional crisis. That is serious, because that affects all American people, that the greatest single most document and the Bill of Rights that keeps us free, they have circumvented that.
And remember, it's illegal to classify a crime
Yeah,
If something is a
right.
criminal act, it is illegal
Right.
to classify it for the purpose of keeping the information
Right.
away from the American
That's
people.
Executive Order 13526, Section 1.7.
See that?
Issued by Ronald Reagan. Yep.
Well, no, it's every president signs that.
Yeah.
They all sign it.
Yeah.
That's the government. That's the document that governs classification for the entire U.S. government.
I want to add one thing too. You remember Vince Foster? He
Yes.
was
Yes.
Bill Clinton's first chief of staff. He committed suicide barely into the first year of the Clinton administration.
Did he?
He did. In his suicide note, he said that he had never lived and worked in a city where people ruined each other for sport, and it's true.
Yeah.
And it's only gotten worse since 1993.
Yeah. It's a
But
monster.
I'm curious, John. It was you quite confidently said that Foster committed suicide.
Yeah.
What about all the incongruent evidence?
I think a lot of the evidence is just one red herring after the other.
No fingerprints
do.
on the suicide note that was ripped into 28 pieces.
Do we know that, or is that
Yes.
just what people are saying?
I do believe that's fact. It took them several searches of a briefcase to locate that notice. And also, when he was found, I don't want to make this a conversation
No,
about
it's
Vince
okay.
Foster, but I was very curious how quickly you said he did
Oh, yeah.
commit suicide. Wasn't he lying downhill, but dried blood was running uphill
Yeah, but
and
it's-
sideways on his face?
But crime scene investigators will tell you that sometimes happens, that the body will move after several minutes, just from gravity or from the odd angle after the shot is fired. I just, unless you can really point to evidence for me.
I think we'll
I,
do that in a future
Okay.
broadcast on that.
Yeah, I just don't. I just don't buy
you
it.
mentioned someone who is definitely in the news still, and this conversation makes it even more relevant because you spoke about how Peter Strzok was
Yes.
involved in your arrest. We've all
Yes.
been speaking about James Comey. In his book, James Comey opens chapter 10 talking about why he never met Hillary Clinton, and he speculates it was because of his role in a law firm hired by the Senate to investigate Whitewater and his investigation of Vince Foster's suicide. I found it very strange that he was speaking about that. But let's move on from Vince Foster. I want to hear more about Peter Strzok's involvement in your arrest. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
To tell you the truth, I didn't realize that it was Peter Strzok who had arrested me until the Washington Post reporter told me so. He said he had filed a Freedom of Information Act request on Peter Strzok and found a document indicating that it was Peter Strzok who had arrested me in January of 2012. There are a couple of things that I remember about that day.
So right after Obama became president? Or?
January 12, 2012.
Oh.
So
Oh,
Obama
right. He had been president for
since
5
'09,
years.
yeah.
Right.
I remember coming out of the FBI conference room and Peter Strzok saying to one of the FBI agents who interrogated me, he said, "God, please tell me that he implicated himself." And the agent said, "Not really." And I said, "I want to talk to my attorney and I want to talk to him right now." That's the only thing that saved me from being arrested. I want to add something that I think is very important, especially for viewers or listeners who don't have experience in this kind of thing. That interrogation took place on a Thursday. The FBI tries to make all of its arrests on Thursdays. So why do they do that? Because the federal courts don't hold arraignments on Fridays. So you spend Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night in jail in the same clothes, waiting to be arraigned Monday morning. Well, if it's the DC jail, you're going to be softened up a little bit during the course of those 4 days. And that's exactly what they want to happen.
You're getting beaten up in jail.
You're getting beaten up because you're a middle-aged white guy in a suit. And they do it on purpose. So the only thing that saved me was I said, I want to see my attorney and I want to see him right now. And then my attorney said that I would turn myself in the following Monday, which I did. But in the intervening few days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday morning, the FBI followed us literally everywhere. And I mean like right on us. They made no attempt to hide their surveillance. They followed us into church on Sunday and sat in the pew directly behind
disgraceful.
us. They followed us into Target. They followed us into a restaurant. There were 6 cars parked all the way around my house, on the block around my house, to the point where neighbors were calling me and saying, hey, there are a couple of cars out there, people sitting in them just staring at your house. And what am I going to say? Oh, yeah, don't worry about it. I'm going to be arrested tomorrow. What do you say? You know, people aren't stupid. They're observant.
Well, John, talk a little bit about why the FBI was after you and how they came after you and why was Strzok there. It seems like Peter Strzok is part of a special team for arresting people who haven't done anything.
It does, doesn't it? He's the head of the National Security Division. He was the head of the National Security Division at the Justice Department. So he would have ultimate arresting authority over anyone being accused of a national security crime. So, yeah, I mean, it's a small town, and so there aren't that many people that are involved in this little world. I got in trouble because John Brennan demanded that I be prosecuted. After I was arrested and my attorneys received discovery from the Justice Department, we found a series of memos, one from John Brennan to the Justice Department saying, charge him with espionage. And then the Justice Department responded saying, we don't think he committed espionage. And then Brennan responded back and said, charge him with espionage anyway and make him defend himself. And that's exactly what they did.
Wow.
And then once I was charged, or even before I was charged, for 3 years, Robert Mueller had set up the John Kiriakou Task Force. It was actually named the John Kiriakou Task Force. They even hired a special prosecutor, Patrick Fitzgerald, who has never lost a case. Right? He put Rod Blagojevich in prison, the Chicago mob, he cracked, he's never lost a case. So they brought him in as special prosecutor and U.S. attorneys, assistant U.S. attorneys from around the country to be a part of this John Kiriakou task force. For what? Because I spoke to the FBI?
Right, let's cover that.
I mean, to the New York Times, rather?
Let's cover that for what again?
Yeah.
You're in the CIA, they're talking to you about these enhanced interrogation procedures. Now, if I ever ask any of you guys about anything that you can't speak about, obviously you'll tell me
Sure.
that. So, we've heard about waterboarding. Mm-hmm. What kind of torture were they instructing you to do?
Well, waterboarding was certainly a major part of it, and that's the part that's gotten most of the press.
Right.
But I always thought that there were techniques that were worse than waterboarding. One was called the cold cell, where a prisoner is chained to an eye bolt in the ceiling, so he can't get comfortable in any way. He can't sit or lay or kneel. He's just chained there. He's stripped naked. The cell is chilled to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Wow. And then every hour, a CIA officer goes into the cell and throws a bucket of ice water on him.
Can't you die from that?
And we killed 2 prisoners with that technique.
Mm-hmm. Holy cow.
Now remember, the Justice Department never said we could kill people during these interrogations.
Well, but also you don't even know if they've done anything. If you're interrogating them,
And frequently they haven't done anything. Don't forget that 75% of the people that we had at Guantanamo were released because they were utterly innocent of any crime.
Wow.
There was another technique, sleep deprivation. We know from the American Psychological Association that people begin to lose their minds at day 7. They begin to die at day 9. The CIA was authorized to keep people awake for 12 days.
Wow.
Well, there are prisoners now who are unable to participate in their own defenses because they've lost their minds.
Permanent mental damage.
Permanently damaged. Yes, correct. Another thing, too. What about those CIA officers that went beyond what was authorized by the Justice Department? What about those CIA officers that beat people to death, or hanged people, or forced suicides, or put drills next to prisoners' heads, or loaded guns next to their heads? What about Abu Zubaydah, who had an irrational fear of insects, being put into a coffin and then having a box of bugs dumped on him and the coffin closed? He was left in there for 2 weeks.
What?
Those techniques were never authorized by the Justice Department. So why in the world did Barack Obama say at the very beginning of his administration that we're going to look forward, not backward? Why? Serious crimes were committed. And where's the congressional oversight? There's none.
Wow.
People ask me all the time, why didn't you go to the committees? Why did you go to the press? Why didn't you go through your chain of command? My chain of command created the torture program. The committees approved and funded the torture program.
Wow.
The only place to go was the press.
And what do you think now about Gina Haspel being the director of the CIA? Wasn't she involved in this torture program?
Gina was heavily involved in the torture program. She was the chief. Well, I probably shouldn't say what she was. But anyway, on the day that she was named CIA director, the Washington Post asked me if I would write an op-ed. So I did. They told me, try to keep it to 700, maybe 800 words. I sent them 1,200. They published every word. And then they put it on the front page of the Outlook section in the Sunday paper, which is the broadest exposure of the entire week. And my point was this with Gina. First of all, Gina is a highly, highly experienced professional operations officer. Congratulations, right? And I think it's absolutely wonderful that the president decided that a woman ought to head the CIA, but not Gina Haspel. Gina Haspel flew out to the secret site only for the pleasure of sitting in on one of the torture sessions to watch.
Wow.
Why would somebody that senior in the CIA's leadership want to watch in person a torture session take place?
Who was it that was being tortured?
I probably shouldn't say.
Okay.
But that's sociopathic.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. Another thing.
Sounds like Heinrich Himmler visiting the
That's exactly what it sounds
Real
like.
close.
That's exactly what it sounds like.
That's exactly what he did, too.
And another thing, too, is what kind of message does this send to the CIA workforce? I'll tell you what the message is.
Yeah.
The message is you can commit war crimes. You can commit crimes against humanity, right? Where you would be hanged if you were a citizen of any other country. And you can still get promoted. And indeed, you can get promoted to become the director of the CIA.
What did it make you think of President Trump when he promoted Gina Haspel? Does
I
he
was
know all
very,
this?
very, very disappointed in President Trump with Gina Haspel. In fact, the morning that my op-ed ran, Rand Paul called me.
Oh, yeah.
And he asked if I would come up to the office to strategize how we could defeat this nomination. So I did. I went up to the office. We laid out a plan. We worked hard. But people got wobbly at the end. You know, you have these people like Mark Warner from Virginia, for example, who's, to me, he's like a joke of an overseer on that committee. And there were so many others who knew better. You mean to tell me there's not one single woman in the entire intelligence community who's qualified to run that agency other than Gina Haspel? Because I can name a dozen of them.
Wow.
Yeah, Gina was the wrong appointment.
Why do you think she got that appointment?
Gina's one of the insiders. I mean, she was really the consummate insider.
But I thought Trump is on the outside of all this.
That's the narrative.
He's got too many advisors on the inside.
Yeah.
That's it right there.
Yep.
They're turning him.
That's it right there.
Are they turning him or are they manipulating him?
Both.
Yeah.
Both.
Yeah.
I mean,
Both.
you know, it's a matter of them telling him. I mean, I've said the intelligence community is basically like the Praetorian Guard. They're guarding the emperor, making sure the emperor does what he's told, or they, in fact, want to, as you could see with Brennan, want to say who the emperor is.
Yeah.
And let me add something to that, because Bill's exactly right. One of the things that the CIA is very, very good at, the day after a presidential election, the president-elect is entitled to a PDB briefing, President's Daily Brief. This is the most highly classified information in the community, is briefed to him on a daily basis, all the updates from around the world. Well, when you have a president like Donald Trump, like Barack Obama before him, that doesn't have any experience in intelligence or in foreign affairs, they're enthralled by this information. When a president-elect sees his first blue border report or black border report,
What does that mean?
classified at levels above top secret, and his briefer says, Mr. President-elect, let me tell you the cool things we're doing around the world. They know they've hooked him. And they bring him in, and they make him a part of the gang.
Part of that scaring the shit out of him.
And they've recruited him.
Exactly. Ego washing, brainwashing, and scare the
That's
crap
it.
out of the president.
But this is
Mr. President, just leave your
mind-blowing.
hands off and we'll take care of this. And you won't
This
get in
is what the
trouble.
Praetorian Guard does.
Yeah.
It's like mind-blowing information that any human brain is kind of
Holy
unable to
crap,
cope with.
Yeah. It's like,
Basically.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and remember, Gina Haspel destroyed 10 of the videotapes of interrogation.
She put him in an
authorized
industrial
it.
grinder.
Yeah, and destroyed him, and yet still became director of the CIA.
That's right.
And Congress looked the other way, and
That's
the
right.
intelligence committee, so-called, and she's the one who destroyed him. Now she's director.
See, what's being lost here is that this entire process of corruption and cover-up and everything that to sustain the ongoing process the way it is, that's festering and it's becoming a boil in the entire, it's our entire country is becoming just diseased by this process. And then we pass it around the world. So I call this the metastasizing malignancy, destroying democracy everywhere.
Yep.
Do we have any hope, Bill?
My hope was that we could hire 3 regiments of samurai one night.
Pay them well and do what you do.
They should be able to handle it. That's like 9,000 guys swinging swords.
And that's the $1 million question. What can we do about this? Because it's so far gone. And I think, at least for us, so far the way is just to risk everything and educate the American people nonstop, any way we can, like this, over and over until the people get fed up.
Well, let me ask you then, how do you do that when people like us have rare access to the mainstream media?
Yeah, that's where programs like Crowdsource, that's why we joined up to do the assessment, is exactly that, because the mainstream media, as we know, not only is bought and paid for by corporate America, but is still influenced by the CIA and the liaison desk they have for every single major news media and Hollywood.
Ken Delanian, formerly of the LA Times, now with NBC News, he was caught thanks to a Freedom of Information Act request filed by BuzzFeed's Jason Leopold. He was exposed sending his articles to the CIA for clearance before he gave them to his own editor. That is inexcusable in a country with a free press.
It's tyrannical. Goodbye, freedom of the press. I mean, that's how bad it is. Right
It really does seem like, I mean, this is one example, but we've caught members of the mainstream press with their hands in the cookie jar, so to speak. It almost seems like they're integrated with the intelligence community. There was a lot of reporting from a guy named Shane Harris, first at the Wall Street Journal, now at the Washington Post. When you said the Washington Post went right to the CIA, I mean, aren't they just one and the same?
Well, you go all the way back to the CIA's origin on the Council of Foreign Relations, and Alan Dulles is one of the most wicked guys who ever lived. Buddy, they started the CIA, the CFR, they've been buddies with the media. Philip and Catherine Graham of the Washington Post were founding members and buddies with Alan Dulles, and that has just continued up until now. It's just more subtle. But I found that out the hard way when they went straight to the CIA and reported my case, which could have put me in prison. But just reinforce the fact that they still have connections, specifically with the CIA. They are still manipulated, without a doubt. And in a free society like this, it's criminal. And not only is it criminal, goodbye Constitution. That's why I say we're in a post-constitutional government, because the shadow government, deep state, CIA, NSA, whatever you want to call it, is manipulating Congress. They're manipulating the president's re-election, as we're seeing now, and they're manipulating the judiciary by coercing them into passing the state secrets privilege. If somebody does get evidence, they nail them and shut them down with that. So they're controlling all 3 branches of government, specifically the CIA and the NSA and the FBI.
And now the press and social media, it would seem.
And the major companies running Facebook and so on. They're all part of it. The prison program, they've been co-opted in, as have the banks, right? They're all in. They're all in it together. So, I mean, I think Goethe captured it the best. He said, no one is more hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe they're free. That's us.
Yeah.
I mean, it brings me back to the question of what we can do. I think that people don't, even people who are accepting this idea that the deep state, the shadow government is controlling all this stuff, I think another thing that we can do is to continue to map it out and share the detail, because the extent to which it happens and works is not yet understood. Larry Klayman's Freedom Watch had a FOIA lawsuit against Robert Mueller's special counsel office, and it revealed a lot of communications between Peter Carr, the press liaison at the special counsel's office, and different members of the press. Now, specifically with the Wall Street Journal and this guy, Shane Harris, Harris contacts Peter Carr, presenting him information about Peter Smith, who was a conservative operative who was conducting his own independent research into the missing Hillary Clinton emails. Now, they've been called 33,000, but it stands to reason that there's many, many more. This number 33 seems to be sort of a steganography move. Whenever they put that 33 on something, it's like a coded message to people. Hey, this is a bit of... What, you're laughing, Bill. Tell me.
Well, it's not a prime number, that's all.
Yeah, I think there was really 700,000 emails that are on Wiener's laptop.
That's right.
And that's when Hillary went, oh, because they found those.
Well, I
from
mean,
a good FBI agent who blew the whistle and probably had his career destroyed. But
well, I mean, I'm saying the NSA has at least the last 18 years of them.
Yeah, I mean, can't they just pull it like that?
Course.
What's all this
Yeah,
back
it's like
and forth?
Love-It. They can go in there and get them.
But they don't want to reveal that the NSA has that capability.
Well, it would expose the degree to which the entire communication system inside the U.S. is penetrated. Yeah.
But what are they doing with it if they never want to
Well, they're
use
using it
or-
against people for criminal activity to crank up false evidence against people.
The
They did it-
NSA is just a totally criminal organization?
Well, you don't understand. See, CIA and FBI both have direct access to their database with no oversight. There's no oversight on what they're doing.
So anytime the FBI says, oh, we're going to investigate Anthony
Yeah, through
Weiner's
the
laptop,
IC Reach
that's
program.
a charade.
Right. That's the IC Reach program. They go directly into the base. So do the other Five Eyes, by the way.
Australia, New
Australia,
Zealand,
Canada, UK.
England. Now, when we first met, you told me that GCHQ and NSA are one and the same. Not
Basically.
that they're working together,
Yeah.
but they are one and the same.
Excuse me, yeah. Well,
located
I
and
mean,
everything.
they have integrated people at NSA. NSA's got integrated people at GCHQ. I mean, it's an integrated operation. We've got integrated sites at Menwith and various other places around the world, you know? So it's not, you know, they actually are together and they plan things together. We pay for a lot of things they do. Like their Bude site, we spent, I think, a little over $200 million to them to build that site. Bude is where that's at the end of England, where all the fibers come over across the Atlantic and out. They tap those and take all the fiber off there.
With this
So
like
Bude.
prism
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Right. Well, it's not prism. They're using various devices like Naris and Verint. There's a little story behind that too. All the code that we were developing at NSA in '97 and '98 was the source code was being shared with the Israeli Unit 8200, which is the equivalent of NSA for Israel.
Right.
So then two guys who were associated with Unit 8200 all of a sudden come out commercially in early 2000 with devices that do very similar things that were done by us
Huh.
in, and they called them Naris and Verint. So, and then NSA bought them
Huh.
after they scrapped our program. That makes a lot of sense, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
it does. That makes a lot of sense.
The idiots didn't understand. They bought the software we gave that was smuggled to them. That they're idiots. You know.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, let me add one more thing about
Yeah.
as it relates to the Wiener laptop.
Yeah.
This is another one of the dirty little secrets of Washington, is everybody uses private email servers. When I first went to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, I was one of 4 senior staff members. And the top 4 of us were given John Kerry's personal email address. He didn't even have a Senate email address.
Ketchup King at Heinz.com.
Yeah, the rest of us were, you know, john.kiriakou at sfrc.senate.gov. Well, John Kerry had, you know, his own just personal email account. That was it.
Was it at Kerry.com?
One of them was.
Wow.
Yeah. The other
Because
was an
personal
AOL
email
account.
is one thing.
Yeah.
AOL.
It was AOL.
See, that's crazy on one level, but the controlling, this is one thing that's been glossed over. Personal email, that's bad. Personal email domain, that's way worse.
Way
Personal
worse.
email server, way worse.
There were a couple of times
See-
where Kerry asked me questions related to specific countries, and I told him that I just can't put it in writing and send it to AOL. I just
Right.
I couldn't. I'd be arrested if the FBI found out that I had done something
Even
like that.
sending to.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Even meeting notes. I mean,
And,
whatever.
and when I said something to the staff director,
But
I said,
see-
I have to tell you, I'm shocked that we're sending everything to these private and commercial email addresses. And he said, every member of the United States Senate does that. No senator uses his Senate email address.
That's
None.
idiotic.
Zero.
But for government employees, that's a violation of the Records Act.
But they're exempt because they exempted themselves.
That's crazy.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, they did. They exempted themselves.
Hey, isn't that nice?
Yeah,
Let's exempt ourselves.
I'm exempted from the criminal justice system. How lovely.
But see, you're talking about Congress.
Yes, Congress.
Now, that doesn't say Kerry was when he was, involved in the government.
Absolutely not.
So he's still with the Records Act for government.
You're right.
So-
yes, when he was Secretary of State,
Yeah.
he was supposed to use.
So was Hillary Clinton.
Yes, that's a crime.
Yeah, right. It's the Records Act. You're required because it's public record.
So
You
they're
don't-
obviously doing it to
Yeah, yeah.
sidestep FOIA, but in
Well,
Hillary's case,
yes.
they're avoiding criminal prosecution.
Right.
That's what they're doing.
Yep.
but I think as we said, having the AOL address, that's one thing. What Hillary did by having her own domain and server, that's full control. She really
Yeah.
wants to be able to determine who can get in and who cannot. And
Unless you know how to break in, yeah.
well, there
that's
was
the
no,
difference.
Like
no
the Chinese,
security
yeah.
there. Right?
Like the Chinese,
Like the
yeah.
Chinese did, yeah.
I mean, she was just using a Mac OS commercial grade consumer sort of server program. Anyone could have broken in quite easily, right, Bill?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, like, for example, the one guy had his passport as password,
Yeah.
Hey, this is really tough.
John
Okay?
Podesta, yeah.
Podesta's password.
And even Comey said that it was very likely that the Chinese, the Iranians,
Oh, yeah.
had hacked Hillary's.
Well, like Bill says, they
That's
aren't
it.
stupid.
It's their job.
Yeah.
I mean, besides the bad, this really gets me about cybersecurity. They at NSA and GCHQ and the Five Eyes and later on CIA, they all knew like thousands of weaknesses in firewalls, operating systems, switches, servers around the world. They knew all these weaknesses, but if you wanted to have cybersecurity, you'd tell the people who manufacture the devices, here, fix this, fix this, fix this, fix the problem. They never did that because they want to continue to look in. See?
To
So
exploit.
Yeah, that's right. And so the operations side, the active attack side of NSA didn't tell the defensive people or any of the companies all their problems. So what does that mean? We're all fat, dumb, and happy here, exposed to the world. People can easily penetrate. I mean, they have no monopoly on smart people. I mean, other people are going to find these weaknesses too. And so when they do, you lose things like OPM gets hacked, or any other number of hacks. And what do? They come back then after the hacks and say, we need more money for cybersecurity.
Right.
And I'm saying, this is a swindle. We're being swindled by people who know what the weaknesses are but don't fix them so that they get attacked, so they ask for more money from us. That's a swindle.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, Bill, about Google Project Zero, because there's an individual who I'm pretty interested in who was both GCHQ, then Google Project Zero, and he was the source of a document to this guy, Shane Harris, that's fueling this story about Peter Smith that I believe Robert Mueller's special counsel office right now is relying on as like the linchpin in their Russia hacked scenario. They want to pin this onto General Flynn, and because Peter Smith is now dead, suicide of course,
What a coincidence. Yeah.
he can't defend himself. So
Yeah.
what do we know about Google Project Zero? It's not very well publicized, but it sounds quite a bit like what you were just talking about, finding these exploits.
Well, I think they're talking zero-day exploits.
It's a team of elite hackers hired by
Zero-day
Google
exploits, yeah.
who are supposedly
Right.
finding exploits, zero-day exploits, in everything from
Sure.
your browser to your Xbox to your cell phone, and
Firewalls,
then,
everything.
Right, and then
Right.
telling everybody, "Oh, hey, Cisco, this router fixed this." But as you said, I think they're just poking around trying to find them.
They're going at a speed that's probably going to catch up to NSA in about 20 years.
Google is.
Yeah. I mean, NSA's been doing this for decades. I mean, these have been known for decades, since the early 90s or late 80s, maybe.
Wow.
So, and that's why they have hundreds of thousands of lines of code in the source code. But that means they've got tens of thousands of attacks or weaknesses in all kinds of things, systems, devices, switches, servers, networks, you name it. So all the source code that exists in the network, they've found penetrating points at all of them. And they've got, well, I probably don't have all of them, there's probably some they're still working on, but they've got a very extensive list that they've not fixed. So until they fix those, we won't have cybersecurity.
It sounds like we'll never have cybersecurity.
Well, if they fix them, maybe we would have something like cybersecurity. But then if they got attacked, then they could say, okay, we need money for cybersecurity. Right? But until they fix them, we don't have cybersecurity.
Right. I'm intrigued by what you just said, that Google is going to catch up to the NSA. Do you think Google is a threat to the U.S. government?
Eventually, yes.
Really?
Sure.
Wow.
Well, do you know who started?
They shadow block people, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're starting to control the narrative, right? Yeah, so that's a threat.
You know who started the algorithms for Google for the two presidents and Google denies it, but it was a CIA grant, CIA technology grant that helped them develop.
Surprise me.
Yeah, yeah.
So Google goes all the way back to CIA algorithms that were created by the two presidents, CEOs that took it out and started Google.
Sergey Brin and...
Right.
Right.
Schmidt is his name?
Well, Eric Schmidt
That
was
came
the
through
CEO.
that company that CIA sponsored.
In-Q-Tel.
Larry Brin, I think, or Sergey Brin and
Brin.
Larry Page.
Yeah.
Larry Page, that's right.
So we hear about that a lot, Facebook, and now we see Mark Zuckerberg being groomed potentially to run for president, where we seem to be living in this technocratic future that Zbigniew Brzezinski predicted in the 1970s, right?
Yeah, well.
Why are you laughing? I say so many things that you laugh at.
Thought of Mark Zuckerberg.
No, it's like, let's watch that mental picture.
I mean, we've already got Michael Avenatti ranked for president. How much worse could it possibly get?
God.
Plus, you know, it's Mark Zuckerberg who rolls out of bed every morning and decides what you and I should read, you know, in the news.
Yeah.
I'm not going to stand for that.
Yeah.
So
No.
Zuckerberg, Avenatti 2024, who are you voting for?
Imagine.
Vote for pencil in Stormy Daniels.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, apparently Twitter just banned John Guandolo, who revealed that Brennan is a Muslim.
He's not a Muslim.
Because
You say he's not.
I know for a fact he's not. He's
not.
one of the most pious Catholics I've ever encountered.
Brennan is?
Yeah.
Because Guandolo claims that he was there when he converted in Saudi Arabia. And my thought was, wait a minute, it's supposed to be the other way around. He's supposed to be converting them. Or anyway, but that's good to know.
I would also point out, though, that Google and a lot of what's being done in the intelligence community and the government is being outsourced to these people.
A lot.
Gosh,
yes.
What that means is now they're controlling the like, for example, they control the foundation of NSA worldwide, because the entire communications network, the servers, all the storage, the devices, everything, even the interrogating, all the management of the software and everything is being done by contractors.
Yep.
Wow.
That's why Edward Snowden, who was a
Booz
system
Allen Hamilton,
he was a system administrator of Booz. That's why he could get in to see all this data, is because they depended on contractors to manage it.
Well, you've heard of the military-industrial complex. There really is a bigger one than that. You could call it the secret intelligence industrial complex. Booz Allen Hamilton, Lockheed Martin, the major spying arm for the CIA, and
like
CACI that did the torture program.
SAIC.
SAIC. Unreported, not accountable, have all signed secrecy agreements. They're under oath. They can't report anything to Congress. And I think it's 45 billion a year that they get in taxpayer dollars to do the NSA and the CIA's work for them.
It's more than that.
And is it more than that?
70% of the budget, which is about $100 billion
Doesn't surprise me.
a year.
Yeah.
It's a
Not
contract.
elected.
Yeah.
Not elected, no accountability. They don't report to Congress. Matter of fact, they
That's
give
right.
money to Congress in terms of grants for their PACs and things like that. $700,000 a year the Armed Services Committee members get from military-industrial complex, if you want to call it, contractors like Lockheed. $700,000 a year goes into the Armed Service representatives' coffers for either re-election or their PACs. So which way are they going to vote? You know?
Now, this raises another question in my mind. What about vendors to those contractors? We're continuing to blur the line of who has access to or information
Yeah,
related
it's much more extensive, yeah. The access is much more extensive, and those people are vulnerable too. So they get hacked by foreign governments. So like the Chinese come out with like something that looks very similar to the F-35. Wonder where they got it.
The J-31, right.
Because they hack into these contractors. I mean, they're hacking. They've been hacking all along for decades.
Well,
But is it always hacking, Bill, or is it possibly infiltration, or?
It's a mix. It's a mix, yeah. I mean, a lot of the people in university now are Chinese.
Yes.
So, and they go for doctorates, and so they
Yes.
get hired into government, various other agencies, and so on.
And they're good at it too.
Yeah.
They're better than we are, frankly.
And they have a
better
very long-term
infiltration.
view.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And
But I had the solution also, other than the 3 regiments of samurai.
Yeah.
We need to have at least 38 states get together and have a constitutional convention independent from anybody in Washington. That's enough to ratify any change to the Constitution.
Yeah.
75% of the states. So if you do that, you can change how we vote and get people in positions in Washington, in House, Senate, and the presidency and all that. And we should change it to make it a true public service. So we can randomly pick from the phone book. What that would do would eliminate all parties, all campaigning, all lobbying, everything. Nobody could get, there was no, what would you do? You get people down there who, A, would like to solve a problem. You know, we don't have that now. You get people who want to balance a budget. We don't have that now. You get people who wouldn't want to go to war. We don't have that now. You know, all these, and you get rid of all these political parties, no more campaigns, no more funding, none of the graft, none of this stuff under the table. It all goes away. If you randomly pick, like we do for jury duty, from some list,
that'd be nice.
right?
Yeah.
And then you get rid of all this crap, and you drain the swamp almost immediately.
Yeah, well, we're for that,
Yeah.
for sure. You're talking a lot about samurais and things like that. It brings me back to another comment that you made prior to the start, where a Japanese agent tried to tell us that story, because that involved Peter Strzok as well. Didn't
Sure.
it?
One of the, I was the senior investigator on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee staff from February of 2009 until mid-2011. And one of the great things about that job is you get to have lunch with foreign diplomats all the time and talk about the issues of the day. So I got a call one day from a Japanese diplomat who identified himself as the number 3 at the Japanese embassy, covering the Middle East. I'm a Middle East expert, and he invited me to lunch. I accepted. I recall that his English was so bad that we had to communicate only in Arabic. I don't speak Japanese.
You speak Arabic.
I speak Arabic. So we went to a small restaurant on Capitol Hill. I remember that lunch being lovely. We talked about Israeli and Turkish elections. We talked about the Middle East peace process. And at the end of it, I thanked him, you know, for the invitation. I stood up to leave. And he said, no, wait. What's next for you? And I said, you mean in my career? He said, yes. I said, I actually think I'm going to leave soon. I think I'm going to resign. I promised Senator Kerry I'd give him 2 years. It's been 2.5. I have 5 kids. I need to make some money to put them through college. So I think I'm going to go into the private sector. And very excitedly, he said, no, don't do that. If you give me information, I can give you money. And I said, what's wrong with you? You know how many times I've made that pitch in my career? Shame on you, I told him. And I went directly to the office of the Senate Security Officer. I didn't even stop by my office to tell my boss. I went straight to security. And I said, I was just pitched by a foreign intelligence officer. He told me to write up the encounter as a memo, and he sent it to the FBI. 2 days later, 2 FBI agents came to visit me. They asked me to tell them the whole story, which I did, and they said, here's what we want you to do. We want you to call him back and invite him to lunch and ask him exactly what information he wants and how much he's willing to pay for it. So I did. In fact, I even said, do you want me to wear a wire or something? And they said, no, we're going to be at the next table, so we'll just listen. Well, on the morning of the lunch, they called to say that something had come up, they couldn't be there, so write it up as a memo. I said, fine. So I did it, and I wrote it up as a memo. And they asked me to meet him for a 3rd time, and a 4th time, and a 5th time, which I did. In the final lunch in Georgetown, he told me that he had been promoted. He had been given his dream job, which was to be the number 2 at the Japanese embassy in Cairo. Mm-hmm. And I wished him well. I shook his hand, and I never saw him again. A year later, I've been arrested, and we get discovery from the Justice Department. 15,000 pages of discovery from the Justice Department.
You were arrested for what again?
I was arrested on 3 counts of espionage, 1 count
just because
of...
Brennan said
yeah,
to arrest.
because of the Brennan thing.
You must have been surprised because you hadn't done anything.
Shocked.
Right, okay.
Shocked. To the point where I really was going to jump in front of a subway train. I watched it come up through the tunnel. I was right there at the front of it. I was going to just do it. And then I thought, no, that's what they want me to do.
Yeah, that's exactly. They want to push you to that. That's how they do it.
I was going to do it that morning.
Yep.
So in this 15,000 pages of discovery, we find memos that showed that there never was any Japanese diplomat He was an FBI agent undercover trying to get me to commit real espionage.
So they could throw you in jail.
For life. Because they knew I hadn't committed espionage, and indeed those charges were thrown out. But they knew their case was weak, and so they were looking for me to implicate myself, but I kept reporting the contact back to the FBI in great detail. I was telling Kevin before we started, I was always proud of my reporting cables because I'm a good writer. I've written 3 books. One of them won 2 literary prizes. I'm proud of my writing. And so station chiefs would always tell me how much they enjoyed reading my cables because they felt like they were in the room watching the meeting go down. Well, that's how I was writing up these memos to the FBI, in that kind of intricate detail, intimate, I should say, detail. And finally, Peter Strzok said, just end the operation. He's not going to take the bait.
In the document and discovery, Peter Strzok said that.
Yeah, he's not going to take the bait. Let's just end this. And so they did. They ended it.
So Peter Strzok is quite clearly a guy who is in these operations
He's
to
a
set
bad
people
guy.
up.
Yeah, he is a bad guy. And that's why when Donald Trump says, well, look at these text messages. We're going to stop him. We're going to block him. We're going to do this and that. And Peter Strzok says, oh, no, I was just talking to my girlfriend. You ruin people for a living. This is what you do. This is how you've made a reputation for yourself.
It's like
by
Gestapo.
ruining people's lives.
Yes.
Well, and certainly it's one thing if he's doing that at Greenberg, Quinlan, Rosner, or Fusion GPS.
But when you're in
FBI,
charge of the FBI's counterintelligence division,
it's outrageous.
it's an outrage.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be a person like that in a free society.
That's why I believe in taking these people into federal court, into open public court, put everything in a sworn affidavit and submit it to any lawyer who will help you to do the lawsuit.
But Bill,
you're right, but let me tell you, they know that we can do that. And so what they do is when they finally give you your plea agreement, right, they say, okay, instead of 45 years, you do 23 months, which is the offer they made to me.
well, they'd kill you in jail.
Well, they make you sign as part of the agreement, an agreement that you will never appeal the agreement, you'll never appeal the sentence, and you waive the right to FOIA yourself for life.
Yeah.
I don't sign that stuff. I just don't sign those. I sign affidavits that I put into courts, accusing them of the crimes they've been committing. That's what I've done in the Third Circuit and the Ninth Circuit.
Yeah. Well, and in my case, they always have the weapon where if it gets too strong, they just use the state secret privilege and shut it down. And seal the evidence so not even Congress can see it.
I made it perfectly clear that if they did that, I would talk about it on the steps of the court.
Yeah, good.
Because these people are so criminal. We've got to stop them some way.
We do.
Because we don't, our republic is gone.
Yeah.
Period.
It's close to that already.
Right.
And you've referred to it as open court, but I find the court to be very closed.
The steps are open.
The
steps of the court are open.
The steps.
Yeah,
There's a lot of reporters out there.
The court itself is under something called SIPA, the Classified Information Protection Act. So what they do is they just declare SIPA, they clear the courtroom, they seal it, and nobody has any idea what's happening inside.
But see, what I did in the affidavit was I included a lot of the material from Edward Snowden as exhibits.
Ooh.
So it's all written into the court record in public, including all the highly classified shit that I mean, those are under Executive Order 13526, Section 1.7. They are violations and cannot be classified. They must be declassified because they're evidence of a crime.
Yeah.
Why is Trump not declassifying that?
Because his advisors have gotten to him, and some of them from the GCHQ people and Brits have come over and said, if you do this, will really hurt us all. You know, you can't, don't do this. It's really, you know. So they've convinced him not to do it. His instincts were right up front. Declassify all this crap, get it out there for everybody to look at.
You know, look at what Mike Hayden has said over the years, that releasing any of this information will result in grave consequences for the national security, irreparable harm to the national security. And that's never been true.
Well, never. For example, put it this way. If all of a sudden you know that I'm spying on your phone calls, what are you going to do? Not make a phone call?
Well, no.
Yeah, we've been there.
Well, but that's the point.
My wife and I have been there. They
But
were
that's the
all
point.
over
That's
us.
your only option.
Yeah.
You can't use the phone.
Yeah.
So if you know I'm doing your email, phone calls, and banking stuff, What are you going to do? Stop banking? Stop doing phone calls? Stop communicating? Period. That's your option.
It's ultimate control.
So that means, what that means, for example, with the terrorists, they know we're looking at them. They've always known this, okay? So the point is, what do? Not communicate, therefore they can't organize an international attack. That means we win, they lose. Or if they communicate, we get them, we find out, we stop it. That means they lose, we win. So which way do you want it? We win, they lose, or they lose, we win? You know? So, the point is, there's nothing you can do about it. Except stop doing everything.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you've kind of lost if you stop doing everything.
Oh, there you go.
Well,
we win.
In my humble opinion, this is worth giving your life for, this stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, it is. If you really
absolutely,
care about your country, these guys that go into battle, well, in our case, somebody has to do this, because if we don't, it's over. And it is worth it. It is worth giving it all.
Well, look how many people have been killed because of the corruption involved in the intelligence community.
Yeah, and those are the ones we know about. What about the ones we don't?
Right.
Yeah.
Let me ask you guys about a recent killing, Jamal Khashoggi. Now, we've seen pictures of this guy brandishing an RPG, hanging out with the Mujahideen in the 1980s. Yeah. He's interviewed Osama bin Laden. He seems quite clearly at least connected to the intelligence community. What do we make of this whole thing? Why
Don't
do we
forget that these same Mujahideen were the guests of Ronald Reagan in the White House. So we're talking about the same period here, where we were like joined at the hip with the Mujahideen because it was all about the Soviets, and we financed them, and we're the ones that gave them those Stinger missiles and those RPGs.
So what was Khashoggi's role there, and why was he killed, and why are they making such a big deal out of it? Why'd they have a body double leave the embassy wearing his clothing? Why do the Saudis love these body doubles?
Because that's a very Arab thing to do.
Yeah.
The Iraqis have done it for decades. Yeah, they think they're being clever. It's just an Arab thing.
Lyndon Johnson did it.
Yeah, Lyndon Johnson did it. Right, Lyndon Johnson did a lot of things we could talk about for hours here. But Khashoggi is from a Turkish family, right? They're an immigrant family into Saudi Arabia. His uncle Adnan Khashoggi was a renowned arms dealer, and for a period was the richest man in the world. Long time supporters of the Saudi royal family, long time. And the Saudis have supported them for many, many decades. So Khashoggi went through this period where he sort of dabbled in fundamentalism. Not extremism, but fundamentalism. But any Saudi citizen will tell you that they are fundamentalists, which they are.
What's the difference between a fundamentalist and an extremist?
An extremist will resort to violence for the sake of violence, for the sake of instilling terror in a population. A fundamentalist believes the literal word of his or her holy book. We have fundamentalists here in the evangelical movement. That doesn't make them terrorists, but there are terrorists who are fundamentalists, right? So it was the duty of every Saudi man in the 1980s to go to Afghanistan and fight the Soviets, right? Because Soviets are communists, and communists are godless, and you have to fight the godless ones. That's what the Prophet Muhammad ordered them to do in the Quran.
But so you're not Muslim, you're an infidel.
Yeah, but that's different. Being an infidel and being godless is different.
We kill infidels too.
Yeah. So he did the same thing that every Saudi man was doing. Now, when he came back, and he was highly educated, at least by Saudi standards.
Khashoggi.
Yeah. When he came back, he became a journalist, and then from journalism he moved into commentary, and then he came to the United States. So his English was as good as ours. He decided that fundamentalism was the foolishness of youth, and got a job here at the Washington Post. That doesn't mean he's not a Muslim anymore. It doesn't mean he's not religious anymore. It
doesn't mean he's not involved with the CIA either.
No.
And that's one of those mysteries that we're probably never going to know the truth about. If I had to make a guess, if I had to put money, I'd say, of course he was involved with the CIA. Yeah. Of course he was. In fact, he would be the perfect perfect agent.
Well, wasn't his dad an arms dealer, or well-known, or his uncle?
His uncle Adnan.
He's got access
biggest
to all
arms
these
dealer
arms,
in the world,
which they probably use for the Mujahideen. It would
without a doubt.
make sense.
Without a doubt. Yeah. So I would guess that he was probably working for the CIA.
So was he killed because he's on the side of the Saudi royal family that gets down with Al-Walid?
He was killed because he offended Mohammed bin Salman.
Offended.
Mohammed bin Salman is a petulant child. Mohammed bin Salman is quicker to use violence against his own people than any Saudi ruler in the history of the country.
Wow.
And it's because he's 32 years old, he's an arrogant jerk, and he just doesn't know any better.
So he's a very dangerous man.
He's a very dangerous man. And one of the reasons why this decision was taken so lightly
Which
was
decision?
to kill Khashoggi was that he's not originally Saudi. His family came from Turkey. And so there's no tribal structure behind that family to come and say, hey, you can't kill our guy, right? Because the Saudi royal family is only able to maintain power because it has the support of the other tribes. The Qahtanis, the Rashids, all these tribes that they fought in the early part of the 20th century have come together to prop them up. And what you do to make sure that they continue to prop them up is you pay them off and you don't kill their people. But Khashoggi's not a tribalist. He's just a guy from Turkey. So Mohammed bin Salman thought, well, if I kill him, nobody's going to miss him because he's not really Saudi, not thinking that the Washington Post may object to this. And that's what happened.
Also the Turks.
And
Also
the
the
Turks.
Turks.
And the Turks.
Yep.
And don't forget that the Turks have terrible relations with the Saudis
I know.
because they have close
They're fighting
relations
in
with
Syria,
the Petraeus.
right?
And they're on opposite sides in Syria.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
Mohammed bin Salman stepped right into it, allowing Erdogan to pick a fight and know that he's going to come out on the right side and
Yep.
the Saudis are going to come out on the wrong.
Right. That's right.
But how could he have not anticipated that the Washington Post wouldn't cover this? I mean, there's
Because
been a
he's the
tremendous-
only son of his father who has never lived in the West and has never been to college. That's why. Because he just simply doesn't know any better.
Wow. And why do you suppose the American mainstream press has given so much attention to this killing of Khashoggi?
Because he's one of them.
There's so many other journalists that have been killed around the world that we
Yeah.
never hear about.
Yeah.
Why is that?
You know, I think it's part of the whole thing that maybe he was connected. Maybe he was, doing some things that most other journalists don't do. It's kind of an interesting development. It's easy for the mainstream media to attack Trump because Jared Kushner is best friends with Mohammed bin Salman. There are a lot of different reasons. They're mostly anti-Trump reasons.
Isn't that weird that Mohammed bin Salman would be best friends with a Jewish American guy?
Oh, it's all about the money. The Saudi royal family isn't religious. You know, King Fahd, when he was the king, came to visit Ronald Reagan. And there's a picture of him raising a glass of wine and a toast. He took all kinds of heat from that back home because they all drink, they all eat during Ramadan, they all pretend to pray and they don't really know the words to the prayers. It's all an act because the royal family is, well, the king is his title, his official title is king and custodian of the two holy mosques. So you're supposed to be the preeminent religious authority in the kingdom. But if you're out, you go to college at AU, which half of them do, and you're out whoring around on weekends and drinking liquor and smoking cigarettes and smoking weed, and I went to school with some of these princes, and all they did was smoke weed 365 days a year. That's what it is.
Doesn't make them bad
Yeah.
people.
But it makes them phonies.
Well, now we know what's hidden in their turbans now. Yeah.
That's right.
So, I mean, it's interesting. The body double is very curious to me. If they're going to kill the guy so brazenly and they don't care what anybody thinks, what was the point of the body double?
The point of the body double was they knew that the Turks had the consulate wired for audio and video. This nonsense about it being captured on his
On the
Apple Watch.
Yeah.
Come on.
I don't believe that.
Every country has every other country's buildings wired.
Yeah.
It's one of those secrets of espionage. And so they knew that the Turks were going to be able to listen if they wanted to. Not to say that they're sitting there with headphones on listening, but if they wanted to, they could listen and see, hear the execution, the murder. And so they sent out this body double. So if the Turks said, hey, whatever happened to Khashoggi? He went in and he didn't come out. They could say, no, he came out. Here's our CCTV video footage. thinking that the Turks will accept that and then not listen to the tapes they have of what had happened earlier in the day.
Except his girlfriend was waiting for him.
Except his girlfriend was waiting for him, and he had told her in advance, if I'm not out in 20 minutes, call the police.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm fascinated by the body double aspect. I don't know if you guys had seen the footage from Las Vegas in October 1st, where a Tropicana security guard named Jason Buffman is seen walking through the casino with a SWAT team surrounding him. And there was, for a short time, speculation that this individual was Mohammed bin Salman. His build, his look is so similar. Well, he's not, obviously, but the question becomes, why did they pull this specific security guard from his recreation to walk him with such heavy security? Was he a body double for MBS?
But why would he be if MBS isn't in Las Vegas?
I don't know.
And why MBS? Why not somebody else?
Well, I don't know. I'm just saying because that shooting occurred in the hotel that's owned by Al Walid bin Talal, you know, the top 4 floors there being the Four Seasons, I don't know. Was there some connection? Is there a civil war going on in the Saudi royal family? That's
Well, there could have been, except for the fact that as soon as Mohammed bin Salman became crown prince, he arrested everybody in his family.
But that was after that.
He arrested Al-Walid bin Talal and Mohammed bin Nayef, his cousin, who he deposed as crown prince. So there's literally nobody who could pose a threat to him in Saudi Arabia.
But I'm saying this was in Las Vegas prior to those arrests.
Yeah, but to what end?
I don't know. Is it possible that MBS was on some secret trip in Las Vegas and they needed to pull this Tropicana guy who looks just like him to get him into the Candora and have him escape as a body double?
But for what reason?
I don't know. I don't even know the reason why the guy walked out of the Turkish embassy.
One of the things that I learned in operations was that the simplest explanation is almost always the correct one. Yeah.
So then what's the reason for pulling this guy off of the baseball field?
That's the cops.
Oh, they don't tell you anything, that's true. Well, there's so much more for us to discuss. I feel like we should get into some other topics. Kevin, what else do you think we could bring to this conversation? I mean, this is a rare meeting of the three of you guys.
How about Russiagate and the Rosenstein indictment?
Well, how about it?
It's all a fabrication, and it's a provable fabrication in court because of the forensics involved. From the data that was put out, he's basing his indictment on DC leaks and Guccifer 2. And they go through a gyration of all kinds of contacts and access points and things like that.
You mean the 13 Russians that were indicted?
Yeah, right.
Including the company that didn't exist at the time of the indictment.
Yeah, that's right. Oops.
Yeah.
Pardon me.
What's that, Homer Simpson?
The most interesting aspect of that, because you and I have discussed this before, the forensics from the forensicator, the hack versus the internal leak of someone transferring the data too quickly. See, the thing that's so interesting is that what I see is the Mueller team now trying to sort of backfill that and trying to come up with new excuses. And this guy, Peter Smith, I think is their latest excuse. Because he's dead, they're trying to make it look like he did certain things, and they're trying to get General Flynn hooked in.
Remember, Mueller and his team were the group that fabricated evidence against us.
Right.
So, I mean, everything he's looking at, I mean, I like to deal in facts, things that I can look at and chew and see and say, there it is, see it, you can prove it. It's demonstrable over and over again. Anybody can look at it and see it too. So that's called it's scientific rigor, you know. That's the whole scientific process of dealing with facts and not opinion.
Yes.
Or belief or desire or whatever agenda you have other than something factual.
Right.
So I looked at it with other people in terms of the dates of data exchange and the rates and so on, plus the different data files that, for example, Guccifer 2 put out there, dated 5 July and 1 September, and they simply merged together into one file without conflict in time if you only look at minute, second, and millisecond. So he did a range change on the date and the hour.
Oh boy!
On the data that he split apart in 2 parts. And the random probability of that being able to merge like that is like an infinitesimal. I mean, it's even better than genetics, DNA.
So
probability-wise.
When you say he, you mean
Guccifer 2.
Is Guccifer 2 a real person, or is it a
Of course
construct?
it is. I think he's in CIA myself, but I don't know.
construct
that.
of the
Is it
deep
one
state.
person, Bill?
It could be a couple, but I mean, one person downloaded. There was one download. There was one split. There were the range changes occurred by one operation. Okay, so it's still 1, 1, and 1.
So when you say there was a split, batch of data was downloaded, split
and
into two.
And I have a little algorithm. I run that algorithm through it to split in 2 parts. Whatever I use, word combinations or whatever
So
I
what
use
is
to
it?
do that.
Emails, and some of them are here, and some of them are
And
here.
some are files and stuff like that. That's listed on the web, by the way. It was put out as Guccifer 2's data.
Right.
So if you look at it, what it was here's this file and the name of the file, and the byte count and the timestamp at the end of the file. Then the next file, name, timestamp, so on. So that you could take the difference in the time and the amount of data that was there and calculate the speed.
Right.
And you could do that for every file. So the highest rate we got is 49.1 megabytes per second. And, and some of our people thought that was doable. We, of course, said it wasn't. And so they didn't believe it, so we demonstrated it, or tried to, the best we could do from data center to data center. I mean, I had people in Europe that I asked to help me out, and they do it. They went to Albania and Belgrade and also Netherlands and the UK. And the best we got was between a data center in New Jersey and a data center in the UK. And that was 12 megabytes, 1/4 of the rate, less than 1/4. But the point also is that that didn't count on top of that the housekeeping that had to be added to it as it was sent across the line. That adds up the amount of bytes per second.
Well, it's also unlikely that a hacker would be sitting in a data center, particularly.
Well,
fastest
that's
in the
true, but also I think I've got the formula for transfer rates and amount of data that's allowed by the ISPs. Okay, there's a little formula that goes with it, and it goes up. If you have 100 megabytes, you get 0.8 megabytes per second. If you have a 200 megabit line, you've got 1.6 megabytes. So it's going up for every 100 megabytes, 0.8 megabyte. I mean, for every 100 megabits,
Right.
it's 0.8 megabytes. So that's kind of the formula. And the guy who ran between data centers, I think it was a 1.5 gigabit line, times that formula would work at that because he got 12 megabytes.
So are you able to surmise who may have done this?
Well, no, we can't. But we know that it was a download. All the rates fit a USB port with a thumb drive. You can do that on a thumb drive, but they won't go across the web. I actually said to other members of VIPs who thought it could that if you guys want to try this, let me know where you want to try it. I'll help you do it. And no one has come forward yet. So, in fact, no one in the intelligence community has disputed that rate.
So do you think it's Seth Rich downloading and?
Well, certain people have said that, haven't they? Like Cy Hirsch. He said there's an FBI report to that effect.
Actually, what Cy Hirsch, on that recorded tape, recorded by Ed Batowski, I asked Cy Hirsch about
I know you
that.
did. I know you did.
And he said that.
But let's put it this way. I know that and Cy wants to protect his sources. Okay. And I believe his sources should be protected. But the point is, there's supposedly an FBI report. This is not the only person I'm hearing it from, okay? So there's supposedly an FBI report to that effect. Now, if that's true, the president should say, give me that report.
But how do we trust anything the FBI says? They're writing reports that
Well,
support
because if they
operations.
have that report, it goes against everything else they're doing, and it just negates it all. It says that, okay, anything you guys do now, you have to prove unequivocally. They have to have cast iron proof.
Why would Cy Hirsch tell that to Ed Batowski under any
I don't know.
Because what Cy Hirsch
Why
said to
do
me was
people
that
tell anything to anybody? Why do whistleblowers go to reporters in the Washington compost? For
Yeah,
example?
exactly.
You know?
For goodness sake, I know. I know, man. Yeah.
Why do you do that?
You
Why
have
do
to
people
sift
do
through
it?
so much information out there and verify it 2, 3, 4
Right.
times
That's right.
the way things are going on, because just all this stuff out there.
But very simply put, though, the Rosenstein indictment of the GRU agents for being agents, right, hacking.
Yeah.
That's their job, hacking. Ours is hacking too. So, You know, that was it doesn't say that they gave it to WikiLeaks. It doesn't even say that, and they used Guccifer too, which clearly was a fabrication. It wasn't a hack. So, I mean, it can't go across the web to Europe. I mean, we tried it any number of ways, and it couldn't get there. And so in order to do it in a court of law, they'd have to demonstrate how to make that happen.
What do you think of this guy, John Mark Dugan, who's in Russia now, who some people have said maybe Guccifer or part of the Guccifer team, and he claims he created DC leaks?
Okay, well, all the timestamps, even if you figure they're wrong, all the timestamps on the data of the Guccifer 2 data being prepared show it's in the United States.
Isn't that easily faked?
Sure, but all of it's fake. Now you have to prove. So prove the guy in Russia is involved in this Guccifer 2 stuff.
No, he was in the United States. I'm not saying he was or wasn't. I'm saying he's now in Russia.
But everything about Guccifer 2 has to be proven.
I'm just asking.
That's my point. And there's no proof for any of that. There's no proof for anything else. There's no proof for those timestamps either. We do have forensic proof that it's one file that's a fake. The whole thing's a fabrication. And for Rosenstein to use it in an indictment, that's a fake too. So
did someone working with or for Rosenstein create it to create this Russia fakeness and indict people?
Well, I don't know, but you know, certainly everything is possible. The point is, anything you want to say, you have to be able to prove.
Well, I mean, right now I'm just sort of speculating. I mean, when you guys have way more experience investigating things. I mean, don't you sort of look at the facts and try to come up with a logical conclusion of where it might lead?
Well, that's what I did, and that's what I Director Pompeo, when he was director of CIA, when I went in to talk to him, at the president's request, I think. So, that's the one thing he asked me, who do you think's behind this? And, well, I didn't tell him that Brennan, by name, was behind it, because I thought, you know, that there had to be an organizer of it, and certainly he was the best candidate. Not that it's proof of anything, but the fact that both the State Department, the DOJ, the FBI, CIA, and NSA, and all those people are together in this.
And the DNI.
And the DHS, and the DNI, yeah. There's only one place those people all come together, and that's at the president. So that I said Obama is my best guess.
Well, and like John was saying earlier, Obama was getting the presidential daily brief every single day. So if they've got informants in the Trump campaign, and if they're spying on these people, and if they're filing these affidavits for NSA surveillance, that goes in the PDB at the top of the list, and it goes to Barack Obama, which means he knew about daily what that operation was doing.
Yeah, and keep in mind also, all these agencies have direct connections to MI6, MI5, and the GCHQ.
Yeah.
So, and they're very tightly connected.
It's a dangerous situation that you guys are describing.
Well, it's a Praetorian Guard.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
What do we see happening next? Will Trump drain the swamp?
You know, if you had asked me that 6 months ago, I would have said yes. And now I'm not sure. And the reason is the CIA and NSA and the other organizations, we can call it whatever we want, deep state, the federal bureaucracy, we can call it anything. The truth is that the people running it are there practically forever. They're there 25, 30, 35 years. Presidents come and go, 4 years, 8 years, and they know they can outwait these presidents. And I think that's what they're going to do with Donald Trump. Yep. I think they wear him down, they hold him off.
Yeah. No, you're right.
And then he's going to go one day.
You're right.
By the way, that's pretty standard. The senior executives at NSA, when they got a new director in, would say, well, we'll just wait till the next one comes.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Simple as that.
And they would just slow roll it.
If they don't like the guy, they just don't do anything.
That's the true bureaucracy. That's a true state.
I can't tell you how many times
that's
during the Clinton presidency where he would say something, he'd give an order during the PDB briefing, and then the briefer would come back and brief us, tell us what the president wanted. And then my management just said, nah, we're not doing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's going to forget about it by tomorrow anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And when we say the CIA is actually manipulating the president, that's what we're talking
about. That's it right there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Plus, they can selectively pick what they tell them.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
That's the more insidious way.
Do you guys believe that Trump is battling the deep state?
Of course,
Definitely.
Well, you'll know a man by his enemies. You'll know a man by who hates his guts, and it's these swampers that hate him and with a passion. They want to not just see him removed from office; they want to see him die. So he's got to be doing something right against a deep state, shadow government, state behind the state, whatever. He's got to be doing something right because they are trying to eliminate him.
Yeah, and the real thing he should do is expose all these things and make the unclassified. He's the only one that can do it. He can order the declassification.
That's right. I wish he would. Yeah.
Yes,
And if
he has
he does
authority
that,
to do it.
Yeah.
it would set sunlight on everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the only way to clean the swamp.
So you've had an audience with Pompeo. Are you still in communication?
Nope.
Why not?
Because nobody wanted to hear what I had to say. I told him all his agencies are lying to him, and the president, they're lying to him. I mean, they're not telling him about the surveillance. They're not telling him about all the stuff. He's being surprised. Well, I said, in fact, well, I've said publicly, the spying on him has gone well before the campaign. It's been going on for at least a decade. So, they're not telling him this. He's finding out by bumping into it, basically.
Well, he could learn all that just by watching Crowdsource the Truth.
Yeah, that's right.
Well,
that's right.
And remember,
Right.
Bill, 3 months later, he was gone.
Yeah,
And so maybe that had something to do with it.
Yeah.
Well, what do we think about that? Why was Pompeo removed from CIA? You seemed it was.
I've got my own
positive
theory. This is just my own opinion. Pompeo, by all accounts, is a pretty decent guy. Big Tea Party supporter. By all accounts, just a man of ethics. So I told my wife this. You take him and you put him as the director of the CIA, and his eyes get open to all the garbage they're doing. How can he stay there?
Yeah, well,
and I said he won't be there for long. And sure enough, he's like,
well,
get me out of here.
I can only give you the answer that he gave me. He said, but you have all these patriotic people working here. They're not going to do that. Oh. I said, you don't have to believe me. All you have to do is go read Intelligence Order 05-03. Intel 05 out of the DOD Inspector General's office. That's the one they highly classified, the one that we made the complaint against about fraud, corruption, and all, and really lying to the government, even to themselves internally they lie. So it's really a sick organization when you get into management of NSA. They're really sick. So I said, you have to go read that. And he had his people take down a note. They go, we'll go read that. I said, but you don't have to believe me. I'm just here to tell you the truth.
John, you were shocked by some of the cruelty you saw from your coworkers. Can you speak
Oh,
about that?
I was shocked by the, it was like situational cruelty. You want to like your coworkers. You spend so much time with them. Nobody works an 8-hour day at the CIA or at NSA.
Yeah.
You're there all the time, and you've been through these shared experiences, 9/11 or operations overseas, and you come to really love these people. They're like a second family to you. And then they decide that they're going to start pulling fingernails out, or waterboarding somebody, or chaining them to this eye bolt in the ceiling. And it turns out that they're not the people that you thought they were. There was a guy in my office. I was in the Counterterrorism Center. He was friendly enough, but there was always something about him that bothered me. And I could never quite put my finger on it. Well, he stayed in the CIA another 4 or 5 years after I left. And after he left, Vanity Fair wrote an article about him.
Wow.
In which they found that he had been a hitman for the Cali cartel.
Whoa.
Before joining the CIA.
Wow.
And the way he was able to pass the polygraph was because he's a sociopath and he has no conscience. Right. So he just blows right through that test.
Just lies and doesn't care.
He doesn't know he's lying. Doesn't think it.
Yeah.
He just it's him. It's
Wow.
a personality disorder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's absolutely crazy.
So it's not all, patriots and Mormons because they have such great language abilities at the CIA. You get some psychopaths that slip through the cracks too.
Worked for a couple of
Maybe
those.
a lot.
I did too, and it's funny that you say that, Kevin, because and this has been proven in corporate America. There are numerous psychological studies that show this, that it's the sociopaths who work their way to the top.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones most comfortable stepping on the backs of everybody
Exactly.
else.
Right.
Mhm. That happens at the CIA too.
Exactly. I'll give you a classic example.
Not only there.
Not only
Yeah,
there.
yeah. In any place that's got secrecy as its veil. I stumbled across, and some of you may know this, a vulnerability to our agents overseas. I don't know if you read that, but I was doing an investigation, doing international computer systems and whether ours could be penetrated or stuff, and I found what appeared to be a foreign national intelligence officer could go into the visa section of any embassy worldwide, hack into the computer, and identify our covert agents, which meant they could identify our assets. So I put that in a report and sent it to the staff involved in that. He was a GS-15, the director of that office, thinking, oh my gosh, this is horrible, we got to check into this. So I'm sitting there one day and I get the call on the secure line from this senior officer, and it's like, it's Kevin Shipp. I mean, yes sir. He goes, that investigation you're doing, drop it now. And I'm like, sir, I mean, this could be putting our agents at risk. Drop it now, I'm telling you. This is above your pay grade and essentially could end your career. Click. I'm like, what? So I sent a documented, with a buck slip and everything, to his office, to him, with the whole report, called them a week later. Did you get my report? Did you read through it? The answer was, what report? The one I sent you in internal tracked mail. We don't know it, but we must have lost it, which became a favorite term of theirs. So I put a buck slip on it. I walked it over to headquarters. I walked them in the office, and I gave it to his XO. He's sitting right in the office there. That's how you did it. Gave her a week. Called her back in a week. What do you think? Did you see the report? What report? I'm like, the one I handed you over your desk, moron. We don't know about any report. We never saw it. And I'm like, what? So I hung up the phone. I go into the headquarters server where I'd saved all the documents, and they've been erased. And that's where the fun started. And so anyway, I took it outside the CIA with two senior state IG guys, one who was a decorated CIA guy, really one of the old patriots. They took the case. I get this call late one afternoon. It's like, Kevin, this is Jim so-and-so. Somebody basically leaked your report to us. We looked at it, and we think there may be something here. Why don't you come over to state? So I went over to state up to the IG office, and we went through the report, and they said we got to check this out. Don't tell your agency managers we're doing this. Lay low. It's going to take us about 3 months, and we'll give you a call. So I'm like, okay, take it. I'm already in trouble with this place. So they go overseas. I get that secure call 3 months later. Kevin, this is Jim. You need to come over here immediately. So I go over to Maine State, and it turns out it wasn't just as bad as I thought. It was worse. Easily they could go in and identify our agents. So I sat at a conference table just like this one, and here was sitting in this seat was the GS-15 CI officer in charge of what should have been correcting a major security development, but they hid it. They covered it up. And at the other end was the two IG guys, and then there was me and Jim on the other side. And State publicly rebuked the CIA for putting the lives of its agents at risk for over 10 years and doing nothing about it. Not only that, but covering it up. And then they issued about a half-inch page thick report to the entire IC about the CIA's breach of security. I remember sitting there at the conference table. It's like, well, maybe I should start looking for a job at, Hobby Lobby or so. I don't know, but that's where the fun started. I wound up on the base. The family got poisoned. Anyway, it was downhill from there.
Well, you can only top it with the OPM hack. Now the Chinese, all these SS-86s of everybody that's ever had a clearance. That means everything you've ever done.
Probably us.
The entire structure of the intelligence agencies of the United States and the distribution around the world. Because it tells you everybody of every organization, wherever they are, and where they've been, and who they're subordinate to, and all their structure. And all the Chinese have to do is look at the list of people going in and out of the embassies, and they know who is who belongs to which agency.
Why has a bigger deal not been made of that?
Because no one wants to openly discuss it.
It's so huge.
Yeah, it was a story for a day, and that was it. It went
There was
away.
like 21 million and some people. Everybody who's ever had a clearance.
And then we all got letters saying that the government is going to pay for credit monitoring.
For 2 years.
For 2 years, yeah. It's like, great, thanks a lot. You just turned over my entire life history to the Chinese.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for that.
And you're going to check my credit card.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, not only that, I'm sure the Chinese are out there selling that to the Russians. And
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
So what's going to happen as a result of that? I mean, that seems like
Bill's right. That's what's going to happen. They're going to be able to identify literally every CIA officer in the world with that information.
But more importantly, also, they can lay out
yeah.
the entire intelligence structure of every agency in the U.S. government.
It's the biggest breach of national security in our history.
Ever.
And they just put it aside. That's how
See,
bad
the
it is.
SF-86 is everything about your whole life.
Yeah. Embarrassing stuff.
Everything you've ever lived, where you've ever lived,
right,
who your friends are,
stuff.
who your family is, who your workers are, who your supervisors have been through your entire career as you change jobs. and to a degree, the titles of your job.
Your habits.
So it lays out everything.
The things you tell your mother are in there, you know, and now the Chinese has 4.6.
Geez, things I never told my mother I had to do.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, seriously. Your whole life is in that form.
Yeah.
So what do we think about the MAGA bomber, the pipe bombs that were delivered to all of
You mean the ones that purposely didn't detonate?
Didn't
didn't have
detonate?
I mean,
detonators.
who would send something through the mail with a clock?
With a timer
You
on it?
guys, this bomber was a half a retard.
Yeah.
That's what this was. This guy's a dope. That was it.
That
was
you mean
it.
it wasn't
no
a setup to
conspiracy.
make the Democrats look like they're being attacked?
No, I think he hated Democrats.
Well,
but
it
I
could
think
be.
he's such a dope that he just couldn't get it right.
So
Really?
you think he's a legit guy who
I'll wait for
Yeah, I
the
think he's
report
just
on
a
him. I'll wait
moron.
for the report on his insanity.
Yeah, he's just a moron. I don't think he's insane. I think he's just an idiot.
That's a form of insanity.
Okay. I'll accept that.
It's like joining the club of all those who Russiagate, and I call them the mentally impaired group. You know, that's fundamentally they're impaired by their emotions.
Yes, true.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I have more questions about the bomber, John. I mean,
sure.
Osama bin Laden, he's ostensibly the most dangerous terrorist in the world. It took them 10 years to allegedly find him. The bomber dude, they find in 2 days.
Because he was a convicted felon whose fingerprints were in the system, and the fingerprints were all over the bombs and the packaging.
Osama bin Laden worked for the CIA and they knew where he was.
Not.
I thought you just said they were paying Mujahideen.
And they stopped in 1986, and he didn't go to Afghanistan until 1991.
Now,
Wait a minute, we have a little something to add here.
Yeah.
We had his Inmarsat phone number.
Yes.
From 93 to 98.
Ordering pizzas to the cave to prank him.
Well, I mean, so we knew within a few meters where he was fundamentally for that period of time.
What was the time period again?
93 to 98. But when after the bombings in Africa, Clinton ordered the missiling in Sudan. And Afghanistan.
Right around the Monica Lewinsky time.
Right, then he stopped using his phone, right? So because he knew he was being targeted.
Got it.
So, but I mean, the point is that gave us the entire Al-Qaeda network worldwide. Everything. So there wasn't anything we didn't know. And that's why, you know, 9/11 is just, it's levels of incompetence.
It should have never happened.
And levels of ineptitude and also agendas driving people. The agenda at NSA was to get money, not do the mission. So when you do that, you're after money. So if you solve the problem, you don't have the problem to get money. That's the issue there.
Yeah.
And that's why they keep avoiding solving the problem. Because if they solve the problem, well, where are you going to ask for more money?
Right
for,
after 9/11, I went up to Kofor Black, the director of the Counterterrorism Center, and I said, Kofor, I wanted to talk to you about an idea I had for an operation. He put his hands up. He said, whatever it is, just do it. I have so much money, I can't possibly spend it all.
What?
That's what.
What was
so I
the
did.
operation? Can't say.
No, I can't say.
That's what Maureen Baginski said. 9/11 is a gift to NSA.
Yes.
Who said that?
Maureen Baginski.
We'll give to a few agencies.
Well,
our
every agency said
Mr.
the same
Mueller,
thing.
what
She-
came after that? National security letters, warrantless wiretaps.
That's
He
right.
lied before Congress 3 times
That's right.
about the amount that they were doing, lied under oath, and he's still, what's he doing now?
And by the way, we should make it clear, the Second Circuit Court of Appeals has ruled national security letters unconstitutional.
No
And
doubt.
so therefore, if you get anyone, ignore it, just go talk to your lawyer and anybody you want. I got a national security letter, broadcast it any way you want, because it's unconstitutional.
So Michael Moore of True Pundit today has come out with his book, How We Dismantled the FBI in Our Pajamas. And one of the primary claims that book makes, and this is from firsthand testimony from retired FBI, people who were in Congress who had to lie to the 9/11 Commission. He's saying that both George W. Bush and Barack Obama, their entire administration, knew exactly where Osama bin Laden was and that he was in Iran for more than a decade. You say no?
I don't.
I was the director of counterintelligence in the Osama bin Laden unit at the CIA. We had no idea where he was. We were looking everywhere, using every possible source that we could get access to, whether it was human or electronic
Well,
or whatever.
You had to look at couriers. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what eventually
and the
happened.
couriers.
Those were the people who were part of the
For
network.
years, we tracked those couriers. You know what we would do is Bin Laden would drop off, or somebody would drop off a cassette tape at Al Jazeera, and we would ask the Qataris who dropped off the tape. Muhammad. Go to Muhammad. Where'd you get the tape? I got it from Abdullah. We find Abdullah. Where'd you get the tape? Rashid gave it to me. Go to Rashid. Where'd you get this tape? Abdurrahman. And then we would get about halfway back, and then we'd lose the trail. And we did that for years, trying to find the courier, the initial courier, and we just couldn't do it.
Why didn't we see the body of Osama bin Laden when they killed him?
I always thought that was a mistake. We should have seen the body. I understand that you don't want to inflame the Muslim world, and you don't want to be open to suggestions that you defiled the body and you violated the tenets of Islam. I get it.
What about Uday Hussein? They ran him over with a steamroller and put it in the New York Post.
They cleaned up Uday's body, and they put it on the front page of every paper in the world. So there was a precedent for it. Oh, you should have seen the pictures before they cleaned him
It
up.
looked like a fake rubber mask they put on him.
That's as good as they could do. They shot him 47 times.
Why put that out? Why put that out? It could have been anybody with a rubber mask on.
Yeah. But with Bin Laden, I think they should have shown us the pictures. Yeah.
And what about Extortion 17? All the guys that were involved in that raid. Was it all of the SEAL team members who were involved in that Pakistan raid who died in Extortion 17?
Mm-mm.
How many of them died?
I thought it was only a couple.
How many were on the raid?
On the Bin Laden raid?
Yeah.
Like a dozen and a half.
And what about this guy, what's his name, O'Neill, breaking rank and taking credit for pulling the trigger? Why did he do that?
Because he saw big dollar signs in his future.
Yeah.
But he's a SEAL.
I mean, you just don't do that in the SEALs, but he did.
Especially in the SEALs.
What the heck? And they're angry with
And they turned on him, too.
Yeah,
for it.
I mean, yeah.
But he thought he was going to get rich from this. And
He's
he didn't.
hated.
He's hated. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's out of that brotherhood.
So
deserves it.
why is there not a fatwa on him and guys coming out of the woodwork to kill him?
You know, when I went public on torture, that was my biggest fear. My biggest fear was that bin Laden was going to say something about it, that bin Laden was going to issue a fatwa, or he was going to make a statement that would mention me. I was so panicked at the notion. I didn't know what I would do. I even thought about leaving the country. But they just don't really do that anymore.
Fatwas are so 1990.
And the truth is that bin Laden has literally zero religious credentials. Zero. He's not educated in Islam. He's not known as an Islamic scholar. He had never memorized the Quran. He wasn't recognized as a scholar by any of the religious authorities in Saudi Arabia, where it counts, or Al-Azhar University in Cairo, the oldest university in the world that turns out the most important imams. None of that stuff. He had zero religious credentials. It was more of a cult than it was anything else. That's why nobody
Did he
paid
smoke
any attention.
marijuana in school?
Oh, he famously. Famously.
Bin Laden.
There you go.
Yeah. There was a picture
There
in
you go.
Vanity Fair of bin Laden as a 14-year-old with his brother, with some of his 110 brothers and sisters in Sweden. And he's wearing like a rock concert T-shirt and has long curly hair. And then he decided 4 years later he's going to get religion.
Yeah.
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 So you think he was killed in Pakistan?
Oh yeah, definitely.
And so you were what were you in Pakistan?
I was chief of counterterrorism operations.
Uh-huh. And what about the Awan family?
What about him?
Why are you smiling?
Because your questions are funny to me.
Why?
Because they're all conspiratorial.
Conspiratorial. Imran Awan was Debbie Wasserman Schultz's IT guy.
Yes.
He was arrested for bank fraud, and they gave him this unprecedented plea deal.
Yeah,
where
they did.
He got to go free with no. So why is that funny?
Because we don't know the background to that. It's never been released. We don't know. Maybe he provided something in exchange for this plea deal. I mean, that's what I would assume. Because they're not going to give you a sweetheart deal just because they like your face.
They might give you a sweetheart deal if you have the goods on the whole entire operation and you could blow it.
They may give you a sweetheart deal if you have the goods on Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Yeah, and the other Democratic senators whose computers they had access to.
Come on, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, they don't care enough about her. This guy, I found evidence that he had a server in a shed at a house in Arlington or something. The U.S. Capitol Police gave it to his defense attorney.
Well, you'd
instead of
have
the
to anyway.
prosecutor. What?
You'd have to anyway, eventually.
No, you're supposed to give it to the prosecution.
Yeah, and then in discovery, they give it back to you.
This was totally mishandled.
Yeah, that's what we ran across that after they confiscated all our stuff. You know, by law they're required within 60 days.
Yeah, 60 days.
To tell you what they're going to keep, what they're going to return. They never told us at all anything. So we took them, we sued them.
Yeah,
You know?
Tom Gregg never got his stuff
We
back.
won our suit,
No,
by the way.
He couldn't make it today. I wish he could, but a
Yeah,
shout out to
we did
Tom
win our
Gregg.
suit.
Real
The
hero,
our
man.
lawsuit, 41G lawsuit against the NSA, the FBI, and the CIA, or not the DOJ. NSA, the FBI, and the DOJ. And we won. And I got my stuff back. I haven't used it though because I'm sure there's something inside it, you know, so I wouldn't add it to anything I'm doing. But I just let it sit there. You know,
I
say
threw
I
mine
got it
away
back.
when I got it back.
It's probably the best thing to do. Yeah.
This was considered an inadvertent disclosure, and it was not the proper procedure. So I found it very strange. It seemed like any evidence implicating Imran Awan was destroyed, given to his defense attorney. He was working for the defense attorney. I don't know. I think this. Not so
And please don't raise Huma Abedin, please.
Why? You raised her. Why
I'm
not?
joking with you. I'm joking.
Why not
I
raise
work
her?
with a guy who's a former Breitbart reporter, and I don't think a single day goes
You
by.
talking about Lee Stranahan?
Yeah. There's not a single day goes by we don't argue about Huma Abedin.
Why? You think she's
Because
a nice
he's
person?
obsessed. No, I don't. I have never met the woman, but he's obsessed with the Muslim Brotherhood, like it's some kind of
Muslim
omnipotent.
League, actually.
Well, we talk about the Muslim World League, and we agree on it. But he's talking about the Muslim Brotherhood as this terrorist group, which it's never been ever. There's a difference between fundamentalist and terrorist. There's a difference.
Okay.
Yeah, the Muslim Brotherhood's never been on the State Department's list of terrorist groups. Never.
They're just writing checks to them.
Well, some individual members have. Some individual members of the Saudi royal family have. You going to bomb them too? I'd like to.
There's so
No,
much
no, they
that
were
we-
selling them 110 billion worth of military equipment.
Yeah, that's right. But I'd like to
They'll
know.
probably bomb us.
With that aside, although you're exactly right. With that aside, I'd like to know why Prince Bandar's wife was writing checks to.
The 19 hijackers?
That's right.
Well, I'd like to know that as well. You're talking about the 28 pages.
The 28 pages.
Let's talk about 9/11 for a minute. You're an expert on the Middle East. I've tried to rent apartments in various cities throughout my life. I don't think you can go to a foreign country without a job, without the ability to speak the language, and not being a citizen, and rent an apartment without a guarantor. Those 28 pages showed us that guarantor was a Saudi diplomat. As you've just pointed out, Bandar's wife was wiring money to the 19 guys. Field McConnell and many others have told us that it's just aerodynamically impossible for a commercial aircraft to perform in the way that any of those aircraft did. Why are you laughing?
Are we going to go down this road? Come on,
The
you
road
guys.
of evidence?
It's all bullshit.
What really irked me was the 28 pages. Now, this is the People's Report, and that's why I'm always talking about the abuse of secrecy, especially when it comes to information that's supposed to go to Congress and the people. So they got the 9/11 Commission report for the people to see what happened, except for these 28 pages. And there were even congressmen saying, unredact them.
That's right.
But it was George W. Bush that ordered that those be redacted, and of course they'd been in business with the Saudis for 20 years in the oil company, and they flew the family out the next day. So G.W. Bush had a lot to lose by that 28 pages.
And remember again, it is illegal to classify something because it's embarrassing.
Yeah, exactly.
It has to be related to sources and methods to be properly
felony.
classified.
It's a
felony.
felony. Yeah.
Correct.
So how is it all bullshit? As you
Oh
just
my
said?
God. The space aliens did it. The Jews did it.
No,
the
no,
Saudis
no, no. I
did it.
didn't
Bush
say
and
that.
Cheney did it.
Well, that might be correct.
Building 7 magically blew up. Oh my
How do
God.
you explain the collapse of Building 7 if no...
I don't explain. I can't. Well, what I've heard is it's akin to a tin can. If you push down on a tin can, nothing happens. If you put a little chink in the side, it smashes down. That's what I've heard. But what I can tell you is, when I was inside the CIA in the year before the 9/11 attacks, we were panicked because we knew something big was coming. We didn't know when and we didn't know where, but we knew it was going to be monstrous. We just didn't think it was going to be on U.S. soil.
So you think 19 amateurs got on those planes,
Yes.
didn't miss...
It's not very sophisticated
Yes.
to do that.
It's not. It's quite simple,
It's pretty,
actually.
yeah. I mean, that's basic. They had box cutters. They got on and slit a few throats and
That's
took
it.
over.
But that's
Nobody had locks on the doors going into the pilots.
I'm not
How
talking
do
about
you-
locks
that's
on
not
the doors.
complicated,
I'm
open the
talking
door.
about, you know, Air Force guys and professional aviators who say that it's impossible to fly a plane in that way.
Bullshit.
Specifically,
Not true.
wait a minute.
Sorry.
Specifically with Flight 175 that hit the South Tower of the World Trade Center. Someone, computer expert out there, took all the videos of the last 12 seconds of flight of that aircraft, and using the process of photogrammetry, which I'm sure you're familiar with, photographs taken from
Yeah.
multiple different angles, we can reconstruct in 3D the entire scene. The plane made one corrective maneuver that went from that corrective maneuver directly to the center of the South Tower. Multiple professional pilots have said it's simply impossible for a human to fly an aircraft in that manner. There's
know,
micro corrections made as they fly.
The problems with the algorithms used to do those generations, and that's really, there's fundamental errors in them. Like, for example, all this stuff doing the weather reporting. You know, if you go to any real experts, they'll tell you there's like 30-some that exist in the world. And if you look in the web, you can see these kinds of testimonies from experts who say there's only one that works of the 30-some, and that's Russian. So we don't use that one.
But wait a minute, you're saying photogrammetry doesn't work?
No, I'm saying you can have built-in problems with algorithms that you don't even know about and still use them like they do with weather. It's not just that.
But
It's
staying on the
everything.
plane, the flight of the plane, you're saying it's inaccurate, this person
They made mistakes. I saw the plane go in myself.
I'm agreeing that the plane went in. I'm just saying that it had to be a calculated, computed path because it was too perfect for a human to fly at 580 miles an hour. Additionally, other aviators have said that that greatly exceeds
That's
the
the
performance.
one thing they did practice in Florida and the flight schools.
Not in a jet at
Flying in a
580
straight line,
miles an
going
hour.
straight in. And they were paid for that too, by the way. They got $65,000 transferred from Shipp or whoever it was. The money guy, the money
He
guy.
affected the transfer, yeah.
And we knew about that. Okay, that was known, that was reported, all of that. And it went into Florida for the flight schools. And then, you know, somebody down there reported, hey, these guys don't want to learn how to land. They want
That's
to
right.
learn how to fly. They don't even want to take off. They just don't want to land. They just want to fly.
Yep, and nobody acted on it.
Nobody acted on it.
Well, like
And in
everything.
fact, they had their damn Bibles of how they were going to work, and they said they were going to use airplanes to do stuff.
And that idea actually came from Khalid Sheikh Mohammed in the mid-90s
Yeah.
with the Bojinka operation. The original plan was to take 14 747s coming out of Manila and to fly them into buildings along the West Coast. But that operation was disrupted. But we knew from 1996 that there was a guy going by the name Mukhtar who wanted to use airplanes as weapons. We didn't know what his real name was.
But, I mean, that means
Yeah.
you have to plan for everything everywhere.
But none of this speaks
None of it
to
was done.
the core thing that I'm bringing forward, which is that calculated trajectory, according to pilots, was not flown by a human. It was computed by an autopilot or a remote controlled aircraft of some sort because it was too perfect. Even an expert pilot is making micro corrections as they fly with their hand on the stick, and this was a perfect arch.
But that was calculated by an algorithm, right?
Like everything, things like this are so complicated.
But I mean,
complicated, like
but again-
9/11. All you can do is take and be open-minded
That's
as
still
an
an
investigator.
approximation.
Take all the pieces you can find and put them together, and somehow get a picture.
Yeah.
You know, there are some people that just wipe the puzzle pieces off and say, "Well, it was this." Then there's other people that don't look at the puzzle pieces. Then there's analysts who look at all this stuff, and there's some weird stuff in there. You know, there's like what the six. I think 6 of them are still alive, or 6 of the alleged
There's a lot-
hijackers. You know, there's little stuff in
Muhammad
there.
Atta's father said he's still alive and he's living in Cairo.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, there's
Let me tell you a story too. July the 6th, 2001, I was at CIA headquarters and I was asked to host a visiting group of Middle East intelligence officers. And everybody does this. And you got to spend the whole day with them, and you schedule a day of briefings, and you give them gifts, and then you take them to steakhouse at night,
yeah.
and you know. So I did, and I set up a briefing with a low-level analyst in the Counterterrorism Center to give them an update on Al Qaeda, just as a courtesy. It wasn't even supposed to be that substantive. So when it came time for the briefing, in walks Kofar Black, the director of the Counterterrorism Center, and a semi-famous redhead whose name I'm not at liberty to disclose.
The Dragon, I think, was her
The
nickname.
Dragon.
But anyway,
Yes. The
yeah,
Dragon
I know what
lady.
you're talking about. Yeah.
So I was shocked, to tell you the truth, and so I stood up and I said, "Oh, gentlemen, this is Kofor Black. He's the director of the Counterterrorism Center." I was really surprised to see him. He sits down and he starts this briefing saying, "Something terrible is going to happen. We don't know when and we don't know where, but we know it's going to be on an unprecedented scale." He said, "We're picking up chatter from Afghanistan." He said, "We are hearing camp commanders on the phone with their students, and they're crying and saying, 'I'll see you in paradise.' We're hearing code words for a massive attack. The honey salesman is coming with vast quantities of honey. There's going to be a massive wedding. There's going to be a great soccer match." These are all code words for a terrorist attack. He said, "We don't have any sources inside Al-Qaeda. I'm begging you," he said, "if you have anybody inside Al-Qaeda, please help us." Well, they were so shocked, they were shocked as I was, that they didn't even ask him a question. There was no follow-up or anything. He shook their hands, he got up and left. At the end of the day, I went to his office to thank him for taking the time. And I said, "Kofor, I have to ask you," because I wasn't working directly on Al-Qaeda at the time. I said, "I've got to ask you, was that for their benefit, or were you serious?" And he said, "Oh, I'm deadly serious." He said, "Something's going to happen, something terrible." And then I switched over to work Al-Qaeda, and I saw all my new colleagues running around like chickens without heads, trying to figure out where in the world this attack was going to be. And they just couldn't figure it out.
That's where the problems came about, the guys coming in from Kuala Lumpur. All of that was known. Nobody was telling people.
There was no exchange of information.
The people at NSA, I hear through the grapevine anyway, they had reports ready to go out on that to try to tell things about people. I mean, they had this barrier that the Bush administration said was the problem, like intelligence couldn't talk to FBI. I had a gray phone. They had a gray phone. Anytime I had a problem I wanted to say that came up that I needed to tell, I lift up the gray phone and call them and tell them. I didn't ask anybody. I would just do it.
You know, I was always that way with NSA.
Yeah.
CIA and FBI hated each other to the point where we actively avoided cooperating and didn't have access to each other's databases. But yeah, the CIA-NSA relationship was very close.
So was the FBI one. We depend on FBI to cover us when we're internally in the U.S. That's what's going on.
Sure.
Notice the Verizon order, the general order written by the FISA court. One of the first things Edward Snowden that was published from Edward Snowden. That was an order for the Verizon to turn over all their data to NSA, but it was requested by FBI, and that's the cover for it. See, FBI is doing the cover.
I see.
And so domestically,
that's important.
Domestically, they depend on FBI for the cover.
Seems like there's quite a lot of that going on.
Yeah.
And then internationally, they've got GCHQ, MI6. There's all this UWASH.
It's a global network.
B&D,
It is. Everybody's covered.
Yeah.
Everybody.
There's like 9 countries that are participating with them right now. The Japanese just joined. They're the latest one.
Well, gentlemen, we've been speaking for over 2 hours. What do you think we should do, Kevin? We could be here all day, of course.
Well, let's try to do it again, I guess, in a few months. We'll come up to another function at our lodge in the mountains with the family if we survive it. But yeah, let's plan on doing it again, and maybe we can get Tom and some other people that can show up, because it's hard to get everybody together. In fact, we got the 3 of us together, the 4. I think is remarkable.
Yeah.
So let's wrap it up for today. But let's do it again. Let's plan another one.
Gentlemen, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank
It's
you.
a
Great
pleasure
to
to
meet
meet
you.
you.
My pleasure.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Good to see you
Thank
again.
you so much.
Yeah.
And Kevin,
Thank you, Jason.
always a pleasure to be with
Thank
you.
you. Good to be
And
with you.
thanks to everyone for watching. This has been a very special episode of the Intelligence Assessment with Kevin Shipp and our special guests. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thanks.
You can purchase books by John Kiriakou at Amazon.com, including The Reluctant Spy, Doing Time Like a Spy, and The Convenient Terrorist. I also want to remind our viewers to go to fortheloveoffreedom.net, where you can purchase Kevin's book, From the Company of Shadows. Buy it from fortheloveoffreedom.net, and you'll get the shadow code that will unlock Kevin's code, revealing the information redacted by the CIA.